Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Badass Records Podcast.
And this is the Central Scrutinizer.
Just kidding. Blair Johnson here. Wanting to thank you for stopping by, as always. And to remind you that new episodes of the pod drop Thursdays. There's video on YouTube and find audio where you stream. You can follow the pod on Instagram or Twitter, badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com, if you want to hit me up to do an in-person episode here in Kansas City where we would talk about some of your favorite music and a little bit about your story. That's all I got for you today. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. This will be episode 81 of Badass Records Podcast. And I'm hanging with Jeffrey Calkins. Yep. It has an S on the end, correct?
Yes. Right.
A.K.A. Aztec Jeff.
That is correct.
And for the second time, I am remote. We're sitting at the Aztec Theater in Shawnee.
Aztec Shawnee Theater.
Aztec Shawnee Theater.
Yep. Yeah.
And you have not only a very nice space, but a very lovely AC unit, which we all, I think, need and give thanks for today on a day like today.
Yeah.
It's really weird to me. Think like I currently live in my 24th home, and so like I have access to a decent archive of memories. I mean, it gets a little fuzzy as the the hair gets grayer or falls out more in my case. But I remember summer being hot and winter being really cold, and being really cold for a good while, and there being lots of snow. And I mean, coincidence or not, if you're subscriber to the notion of global warming. Yeah. It was really mild last couple summers with just a couple pockets.
Right.
This is obviously a pocket, but when it's like this for multiple days, especially if it goes into the night, it's like the world feels like it's on fire. I mean, this is insane.
Yeah. It is nothing like in your memory from a child. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. We'd be outside. Way. Gen X kids outside until the lights are on and coming for dinner, blah, blah, blah. And just constantly playing, building forts, playing soccer, whatever, riding bikes to the pool.
Yep.
Sunscreen was a thing, but we didn't, I'll get it,
Yeah, whatever.
Now
we had, too many other things to do to stop and put sunscreen on.
But I don't feel like the heat was this oppressive.
No, I don't think it was. So did you grow up around here then?
So, yeah, I mean, my folks are 1947 babies.
Okay, yeah.
And my dad went to Rockhurst and my mom went to Miege. They met and married, and then he took a job in Columbia, South Carolina, working for a firm that published yearbooks. So they went. They went there as whatever,
like a Jostens kind of place.
They went there as kind of newlyweds, and I was born there. And I think that my mom was homesick, and so they came back, and I was in KC, so from like 3 to 6 or 7, and then in Georgia for 3 years, and then back to KC, and then in and out of whatever. Went to Shawnee Mission East, and then Pittsburgh State for a year, and then boogied out to Colorado for like 7 years and did school out there and played and had fun, and then back to the KC area in like 2000.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, that where I'm drawing from memory wise is right around here. Yeah.
Well, and if that was in your formative years, that's usually where our memories are.
Yeah,
I mean, it's whatever, especially so my childhood growing up, not nearly as spread out.
Okay.
Because currently I live in Western Shawnee, 5 miles from here.
Yeah.
My childhood home is less than a mile from here.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Our family business, my grandfather started just up the street, started in 1946. And a weird story about that, our building always had a thing on it that said established 1957. I just figured that's when it was. My grandfather was a contractor, electrical contractor.
Okay.
Started electrical supply business, what I assume 1957.
Right.
I've thought that forever.
Uh-huh.
And trying to remember what year it was, the Shawnee Chamber had their 75th anniversary, 2021.
Okay.
So they had their 75th anniversary, and they're going around, and they had given plaques out. They gave us a plaque for being in the chamber for a long period of time, and I thought, man, those numbers don't add up, but I'm not going to question them. But they had a big 75th anniversary celebration, and I knew we'd been members of the chamber for a long time, and so they were such a big milestone for them. They were doing some videos and doing all this,
Sure.
and they'd be at their big gala at the end of the year. So they asked me to come out and film something for the family business, because my sister and I and my son are still involved in it, or were at that time. Yeah, that's great. We had just signed up for the chamber with the theater.
Okay.
Literally within 2 weeks of them filming this, because they were filming it in 2020, so to come out in 2021. And so I went out, and I'm talking to them. They're talking to me about, Calkins Electric Supply and how long they've been around and all this. I'm wearing my Aztec stuff.
Nice.
And I said, well, I told the guy, I said, well, I know we weren't there from day one because we were established in 57. The chamber historian, Mary, was sitting right there. She goes, no, your grandfather was on the books from day one. And I go, really? She goes, oh, yeah, we have record of it from 1946.
Huh.
News to me. Had no idea.
Right.
Because I knew like Gene Amos and Donovan's down here, the auto shop and all that. There's a lot of long time. And I think Gene Amos, I think that the senior was the one that started the chamber. But my grandfather was in the chamber from the start. Learn something new every day. I actually called my dad later.
Nice.
I call him and I go, all right, what's the deal with the 1957?
Yeah, what was this?
I go, was it 46? He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, your grandfather, he goes, he just put a number on it. It was probably when he incorporated.
There you go.
And I'm like, okay. It just seemed really weird to me that all this time, this family business and everything, now you've been around, 11 years longer than you think. But when you're 10 or 11 years old, you don't think. I think back of when we started the theater here, and it's hard for me to believe that we've been here almost 3 years.
Wow.
And that we've actually owned the space for 6.
Okay.
Because it took us a few years to get it going.
Right.
Or to get it restored.
So speaking of, so we're on the stage.
Yeah.
Which is super cool, of the Aztec Shawnee Theater.
And I do appreciate you coming and doing remote. I know it's not your normal forte, but anytime that I can have somebody in this space, I love it.
Wise, foolish, or otherwise, I'm actually gonna, in October, I'm gonna fly out to New York and Uber to a dude's tattoo shop.
And do one there?
And then Uber right back to the airport and get on a plane and come home. I mean, it's just
that in and of itself
is
a fantastic experience. It just is.
I mean, so like I need the practice and it's opened up a new lane in my brain of possibility.
Possibilities. Sure.
Otherwise, it was
all local.
100% depends. Well, I mean, 100% of it depended on the person saying yes and then coming to my house.
Yes.
I just wasn't thinking. Yeah. I just knew, I've known since day one, I don't want to do remote. I just think that you lose something with the screen and it's glitchy, and I do enough of it in my regular job, life. But anyway, what is the physical address of the theater here?
11119 Johnson Drive.
11119 Johnson Drive.
Yeah.
And the website?
AztecShawnee.com.
AztecShawnee.com.
You can we actually own the other domain name, which is Aztec Shawnee Theater, which is our branded name. So we'd actually own AztecShawneeTheater.com. It'll route right back together.
Okay.
But Aztec Shawnee was the very first one we got. and it routes it right in there, and it's a little shorter.
So you've been alive and breathing as an operation for 3 years, but started it 6 years ago?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We bought we purchased the building in 2017.
Okay.
And in the idea to restore it, start showing movies, that was the main goal. Our whole business plan revolved around reopening it as a vintage movie house.
Cool.
Yeah. So
And are there photos of what the place looked like floating around somewhere?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
cool.
Matter of fact, there's a lot of outdoor photos. There's very few indoor.
Do you have access to any?
Uh-huh.
I'd love to throw
Yeah.
one on if we could.
Yeah.
For when we're ready to put
Yeah.
this up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
I'll get you some of
Right
those.
on.
Yeah. So, and I mentioned Donovan's, Pat Donovan, that still runs down here at Donovan Service. His sister, I'm going to blank on her name. I think it's Kathleen. She brought me pictures because she worked here. There's so many people in Shawnee that worked here when they were growing up.
That's cool.
I mean, really weird.
Has anybody ever that used to come into the old one ever walked in and go, I don't like what you did with the place?
Nope.
Everybody's like, whoa.
Yeah,
I bet.
Trust me, that was a concern. But the thing was,
Just
from the
nostalgia?
nostalgia.
Okay.
So you want to do it right. This is very much a community project. Multiple people had tried to open it before.
Oh, wow.
They did a huge. The city did a huge study back in the early 2000s. As a group called Hyatt Palma, and they talked about how to reinvigorate this downtown area. And they can't come in and say, put a Wendy's over there and put a Walmart over there.
Right.
They can't use anything by name, but they can say put retail space, do a restaurant over there, and do all this. But it's a 260-some page report about what they should do, different programs, different things that they can do.
Wow, that was somebody's job to put that together.
Yeah, put that together, and because that's their forte. This company's. That's what they do. They go in and say, okay, this is what makes a district work, especially a kind of a historic kind of district.
Right.
Depending on what you want to do, but this is what would work. But the theater by name, because it was listed as the Aztec, says open the Aztec, get it open. It is mentioned. And I had a count on it at one time when we went to the council.
You read that whole document?
Yeah.
267?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, but it was cool.
Okay.
I mean, if you think it's something you're like, well, I think we want to do this. When you read a document like that, and it says, and it's very in legalese, you just.
That's
okay,
where
so
I
you
would
do
be
all
like,
this,
I don't
and
know
it's
what
kind of
this
going along with
means.
it. Says, get that theater open. They knew that with the opening of a historic theater, you can kind of build from that. So if you have that, you have a little bit of an entertainment, a pole, a kind of central area, and then other people want to be around it. And as those go around it, more people want to be around it.
Right.
So it's not like you can go into just any little old downtown district and go, okay, do you guys have a theater?
Right.
No? Okay, well, we can't say open a theater. It doesn't do the same thing. You have to find something that's historic, that's a draw that everybody wants. So that's what they did. They said, you need to open this. So that was our key point, because we ran the numbers to open it. We had the opportunity to buy it in a really odd way. My brother knew the owner. He had bought it in the late 90s, early 2000s to get it open. He put the marquee on it to get it going. But it never came around to it. It just never quite got finished. And there's been a couple of people in the meantime that wanted to do it. But they were redoing this whole Neiman Road area. My brother and I were actually at one of the meetings, one of the early meetings about it, how they're talking about, different things they're doing and how this works and why it works and things like that. And the city's wanting to do something to really build this now, because now they've got all this money involved in redoing the streets and all the infrastructure. And my brother tells me, did you hear that Wade had sold the theater? And I said, yeah, I heard that. And he goes, I called him. And he didn't. The guy that bought it said he had bought it, but he really hadn't yet. And so everybody thought, oh, he bought it, and he's going to do all these things, and da-da-da. And so everybody was really hyped about it. And when we figured out that he really hadn't, then they're like, oh, now. And the city's like, man, here's another time that somebody wanted to do it, and they don't think he's going to do it. In the conversation my brother had with Wade, Wade said, why don't you buy it? And so Chris came to me, and my brother had been retired from the family business for What would that have been? About 4 years by that time. And he said, do you want to see if we want to buy it? I mean, I'm in. I mean, I went here as a kid.
Okay.
I was pretty young.
Seeing movies?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, seeing movies.
Yeah.
1974 it closed down.
Oh, wow.
So I would have been 8 years old at that
Sure.
time. But I remember movies I saw here. But when you go to a theater, like I've been to a bunch of different theaters. I don't know what the inside looked like. I
Right.
was there to see a movie.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what the inside looked like at all.
It got dark and you watched a movie and then
watched
you left.
a movie and then we walked home or rode our bikes home.
I
like
just
you
saw
said.
the projector for the first time.
Oh yeah, it's sitting up there. Yeah.
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 Handsome.
Yeah. So that's where it started from. Went to the city, told them, hey, we're thinking about buying it. And they're like, okay, well, not like we have any sort of pull with the city, but
Right.
we've been here a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we've lived here, and they know. With Chris and I,
Family business
Yeah.
means something, right?
Yeah.
To somebody? I don't
right.
know.
And so we need to look and see if we can afford to do it and if it's a viable business. If we would have sunk our own money into it, bought the building, and tried to restore it, it would have been a losing proposition. We wouldn't have been anywhere close.
Run out of funds before you
Oh yeah, before
flip
you
the
would,
open sign
before
on?
you open it, or we wouldn't, but we would be so cash strapped that we would never be able to run it.
Right, because every time you need to make a purchase for
That's right.
light bulbs
No
or
operating,
whatever,
we'd have to-
toilet
and
paper, you
yeah.
need revenue.
And it's not like you can just go to the bank and say, hey, I have this idea.
Yeah.
We have never, ever done this before, but we're going to try to do this.
Trust me.
And you just got to trust me on this one. So, so when we told them that, we were like, well, I mean, we run the numbers, and it didn't. And then there was the talk, well, there may be some money available, economic development, because of this study.
Oh, wow.
Because they know that if we open it, it's going to be helpful to everybody. Okay.
Right, a guest on recently, Patrick Spray, he's 50% of Center Cut Records.
Mm-hmm.
And he just threw out, Taylor Swift came up. And so just talking about the idea of like every person that is out to see that shit for,
The money they spend.
Yes. And so, I mean, with a community like this, you got to think that some of your patrons are going to grab a bite before or a drink on the way home or vice versa.
And that's the idea. And,
Right.
and obviously, 15 years previously, there'd been a study that said, hey, this is going to work. That really worked in our favor. So with Chris and I, having a business down here for so long, being familiar with a lot of the people, knowing what this is, and it's important to us. But if we were multi-millionaires, it would have been a no-brainer. You just do
just
it,
a tax write-off.
just do it,
Yeah.
and you just and we're like, how much money? So
how many zeros are
yeah,
on there?
wow, is that a lot of? That's a lot of.
Looks like 7 zeros.
Yeah, that's a. But so the city said, they could help out, but we have to do a full business plan. We have to decide what we're doing, and we did. We put together full business plan. Big help from Kansas Small Business Development Council
on how to like do things and who to go, where to go.
Well, when I was growing up, I cleaned the offices at the family business. Did that. When I got into high school, as soon as I got my driver's license in the summer, I would be a delivery driver there. When I went to college, in the summers I'd still work there for a couple years, and that was it. And then later on, I ended up going back, and it wasn't my game plan, but I ended up going back to the family business and working there in the early 90s. But that's my whole, I had a couple other jobs, like when I was in college and things like that. But
yeah, that doesn't look like a resume where the bank would go, how much?
Yeah.
How much do you need?
Yeah. How much you need? Just here, let me
go in the back, just take what you need.
Just take something. Here's the key to the vault. The hundreds are over there. Okay.
We want you to start with the ones, but the hundreds
are there if you need them.
Yeah.
So, they, I'd never delved into that, so it was a huge help. So that whole summer in 2017, that's what I did. I wrote a business plan.
Just seriously? What age are you?
This is just I'm 57 this
Okay,
year.
okay,
So,
all right.
So this isn't that long ago, but
Right.
Post 50.
Sure.
So
And you've got an astute enough mind and experiences that with a little bit of guidance, you can make it look handsome.
It was a lot of guidance.
Well,
It was a
whatever.
lot of guidance.
You turned it over to somebody, and somebody said, "Okay."
Yes.
So right.
So we had to have that to get funding from the city.
Okay.
With the funding from the city, it was a possibility. It was still a stretch.
I bet, man.
If we could get the funding from the city.
Right.
So to get the funding from the city, we had to have this. We had to have a full business plan. We had already talked to the original owner. We had a contract to hold it for us. No guarantees, just to make sure we could do it. Then the city said, well, we have some funds. They said, see if he'll extend it. And they asked, because my brother was more familiar with him, and they said, well, he let you extend it. And he goes, I don't know. He might just say, no, never mind. And he goes, no, they were like, no, he wouldn't do it. He goes, oh, yeah, he would. He'd pull the plug on it if he needed to. So my brother went back to him, asked him if he would do it, and he said no. Not in your life.
Sorry, what are you asking him to extend?
We're asking him to extend our contract on the building. This temporary, just don't sell it to anybody else. We're trying to work a plan. We put some money together that was not guaranteed. He would give it back to us if we bailed out of it.
Okay.
But this is, well, I can tell you when it was. It was the end of June 2017.
Okay.
Mid-June was when they had the council meeting. They said, go back to him and see if he'll extend it, because obviously we can't do anything in 2 weeks. We have to have a full business plan. So we're thinking, August or September. See if he'll do 90 days,
Right.
3 months.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah. And
he said no.
My brother said, I'll ask him, but you never know with him. He may just say, no, I'm tired of dealing with it. Now remember, this is the same guy that tried to open it before, but it never really came to fruition.
Okay. So he has a little bit of an emotional tie.
I think so.
Okay.
And part of it was, I truly believe, now the guy that owned it before, Wade Williams, movie producer, produced a lot of B movies, owns a bunch of theaters, one of the most interesting people to sit down and talk with. I love sitting and talking with Wade. Different type of personality. And I think when he was building this, he felt like the codes people and everything were getting in the way of his creative freedom. They just got in the way, so they kind of butted heads. And so it never really came to fruition.
So it's a possibility that he was like, if it didn't work for me, so
it's not
part
gonna
of me
work for you,
doesn't.
and I'm just gonna make the city suffer. I could see that. It's something that he would do, but he also would really like to see it open. But so my brother goes back to him, and I had to wait for the call from my brother, and he called me. It was June 27th. And I'll tell you in a minute why I know the dates.
Yeah.
June 27th. And he goes, Wade said no. He's not going to extend it. Now, you got to be kidding me. I said, no. He flat out said, nope, we're done. And so my brother said, what do we do? And I said, well, how bad do you want to do it? And he goes, I would love to do this. So I always considered, my brother did a lot of things for me. And I knew it was something he really wanted.
More so than you did?
More so than I did. When somebody does some things for you, and you never have to repay them, but you feel like, man, if there was ever a time that I could do something for them that they would never expect, that would be fantastic. But those things don't come around very often. When you find out somebody that did something for you and you can do something for them, do the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, all the way down to just the slightest, tiniest gesture.
Right.
Just to say, I know this isn't exactly like repayment to the...
But I would, here's something, thanks, So I knew he wanted it. And he said, well, we're going to have to go back to the city and tell him no. And I go, give me a chance. He goes, what are you going to do? And what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to talk to Wade.
Oh, shoot. You're going right
And-
back to the source.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I talked to Wade before. I mean, I'd met him years before. He's, like I say, he's one of the most interesting people
Sure.
to speak with, and I love sitting down and talking with him. So I talked to him. See, had a really good conversation with him.
You set something up, like he knew when you were coming and why you were coming.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I actually just talked to him on the phone.
Okay. Oh.
He knew I was going to call.
Okay. Nice.
I told my brother, tell him I'm going to call.
Right.
And it wasn't like a surprise. I'd talked to him before. It wasn't like,
Sure.
now I'm going to talk to him. You've talked to him. Now I'm going to. That's not what it was.
Right.
It was just that way. I said, don't give up on it yet. Let me see what I can do. So, and I stopped a minute ago because I have to like project as I talk through this because it's kind of emotional.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm going to go through this.
Yeah.
So I talked to Wade, and we talked on the phone, a hot day. I sat in my car
Oh.
because I was working, but I didn't want to be in the office. I wanted to be outside the office, and I was talking to him. This was the 29th, 2017, on the 29th.
2 days. Okay. Gotcha.
And then 2 days later when I finally got a phone call with him.
The meeting was the 17th, and then the 27th.
Yeah, and then we needed to know something before the end of June. If because that's when it was over. It's
Yeah.
like the end of June or the 1st of July. I think it was actually like July 1st or
Okay.
something was when the contract ended. And I talked to him, and we talked for a good hour on the phone. I was just talking with him about different things, but in the conversation, I talked about what we wanted to do because I felt like it's what he wanted to do with it and just couldn't do it
Previously.
previously. Just kept talking, doing different things. And he said, I told your brother no. I said, I know, but you haven't told me. And I'll make you a deal. So I made a deal with Wade,
Okay.
and I will never release what that deal was.
Oh. It's private info?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
There's two people that know.
You and Wade?
Yeah. And if it gives you any indication, and unfortunately, Wade passed away last year.
Oh, shoot. Wow, that's just
And it
got
will-
really gangster all of a sudden.
Yeah, because I made that no.
Right.
No, I was so upset when I found that out.
Oh my gosh.
Because he was. After we did end up getting the theater, I sat down with him 2 or 3 times, and they were supposed to be about progression and different things that he was trying and things that he wanted and all this, and it just turned into this conversation about his life and all these different things that he did, and because he's just an interesting guy.
Okay.
And I loved it. But I convinced him and made him a deal. And I said, I need 90 days. And he gave it to us.
Wow. So you didn't even tell your brother?
No.
Wow. Okay.
But the reason I know the dates, you can edit this part.
Oh, man.
It was my brother's birthday.
Okay.
So I got to call him on his birthday and tell him we get the theater.
Okay.
So, or at least we can go forward with the
We
theater.
have some time.
We have some time.
Yeah.
So,
So
we
that
have 90 days,
valuable
which-
resource
yes, yes.
time.
And we know by the way the first progression worked that we're trying to get in with the city council, talk to them for the meetings and all this. And well, we only have meetings these times. And so it kind of kept getting pushed. So,
All of a sudden you're 90
well, we're
is
here
60.
now, so I think we're okay.
Yeah.
I told them we had 60.
Okay.
Even though I knew we had 90, because we needed it to happen, and we knew it would come right down to the wire.
Right.
So, sat down, we got it. We got the contract renewed to try to go through with it. Did the numbers. I ran did the whole business plan. Had very good help with that. We were shooting for August. The council meeting that was at the end of August to get approval on it. It got pushed back, and
This is to get approval on your business plan.
on the business plan to get funding from the city.
Okay.
Because we already had backing. If we got the funding from the city, we had a bank behind us. because it would have been a big chunk of money.
Man,
So
important parts.
yes,
Kind of
and they have
lying
to
in-
all align.
Jeez.
And they said, well, we're getting down to that 60. See if you can, what do you think you can do? You think you can get a few more? And I go, do you remember what happened the first time we did this? And he said no. They're like, well, yeah, but da da da. So we're pushing, and I know we still have another 30 days.
That's great to have in your back pocket.
It was. And then they were talking about it, says, okay, well, we're going to do this and that and everything. And I have to send them over the contract. I have to send them over a copy of the contract. And of course, it has the date on it. It's like October 2nd. And here we are at the end of, and they're
Nothing to
like,
see
I thought you
here.
said 60 days.
Please
I go,
disperse.
what do you think I did?
Pay no attention
I
to
said
that
we
man
had
behind the curtain.
about 60 days. You didn't say about.
Right.
But they were all very, everybody knew. Everybody, they knew, okay, we get it. So the end of September, we got the approval.
Wow.
It was on a Tuesday.
Okay.
The closing was on the next Monday. That was when the contract ran out. We would have lost it.
Man.
Yeah, it was that close. But it was the timing was just right. We had a little bit of a buffer, luckily. Worked out good. Very happy the city, gave us funding on it. And even when the night that I presented at the council, I think that was the second time I presented, because they wanted to adjourn and go back and think about it.
Sweating bullets over here.
Yeah.
Thinking about that.
You should have seen me up there.
Right.
And the funny thing was, and it was, I was not into politics. I didn't know about the city. I knew how it kind of ran. My brother kind of went to some of the meetings periodically, and he told me how they vote. And, when we knew we needed, a majority vote. And in this case, we actually needed a 2/3 because we'd already been there once and all these things. So we're counting. We're, okay, who do we have? Who's really for us? Who is kind of on the, so I still got to sell it. I got to show them what's going on. So, they still could have said no, because if we wouldn't got the funding, we wouldn't have got the bank funding, we would have lost it. And there was no time to revamp it. So I'm up there talking about it and doing all this, and then they go to the vote. And I'm expecting them to go down the line, say the person's name, they say yay or nay, then they go down the next and they do all this. And Mayor Dissler was running the meeting, as she usually does. She's talking about it. I'm up there. I'm ready for all this thing. And she does this motion thing, and I'm thinking she's moving. Okay, we're going to move forward with this, and I'm ready for them to just go down the row and start voting. And all of a sudden, she looks over at me and she says, and she lips to me, congratulations. I missed it. They all voted in one shot. They just said yay or nay. And they knew from that we had it. And I was just, what's going on? And she looks over and she says, congratulations. And I'm like, oh, and everybody's cheering, but I missed it. I told her that later. I go,
Wow.
I thought it was one of the, no. So it was very surreal.
Wow.
Had people come up to me, had a gentleman come up to me that night, engineer, he was a retired engineer, said, hey, I want to help you with all your drawings free of charge.
Get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
The same night as the
Same
meeting?
night.
Wow.
The night of it. As soon as it was, he was there, and it was a packed house. He said, I want to help you with that. I want to take care of you. And Bob Curry, the engineer, he'd retired, and he wanted to do it, and he did. He did all of our MEP stuff, and
whoever he had to turn him into, they were like, oh, yeah, this all checks out. It's legit.
Yeah, which
cool.
saved us a considerable amount of money. And we had a lot of changeovers. We had different things we wanted to do, and that didn't work. And I don't think we really touched much of anything in here for 6 or 8 months just to get everything going. After we got it,
okay.
yeah. Actually, I think it was about 8 months.
Sure.
Because we had to get everything planned out right.
Yeah.
So, but it did. It worked out very well. The thing that really changed it for us, right before we did that we did everything, we brought in a third partner, our friend Bruce Young. We brought him in.
Oh, third meaning you, your brother, and Bruce. Okay.
Yes. So, and that was fairly early on. He's been had a Shawnee business for many, many years. So there again, another tie-in, and with it being three of us, we had a little stronger hold on it, and so that helped out too. And his idea after we started up was that maybe we could, because he had a tie-in for the local concerts, that maybe we could do some concerts too. So now I have to, and I remember doing this thinking, well, if we do like a Friday concert, that wipes out one of our big movie days. Because you have a concert that night, they've got to set up and do all this. All of our prime revenue.
Showtime, yeah.
So maybe once a month. So I had to rework the business plan a little bit to try to work that in.
After you worked so hard.
Yeah, but which is fine. I
Right.
thought this is kind of cool, and try to do that. And so we finally got everything going. Construction really started ramping up late 2018, first part of 2019.
Were there any large pieces of equipment here, or was it just dudes with tools, or
People with tools.
Okay.
I mean, scissor lifts to clean everything out. There's YouTube videos. DHTV used to be just right down the street. They moved, but Mark Horner and his crew, they did some videos for us free
Cool.
of charge.
Very cool.
They'd come in here every once in a while and video and do this. They put together these really high-end professional video recordings, which are on YouTube, by
Nice.
the way. We have a YouTube channel which only has like 4 videos. But they did those. And of the demolition and as the
Cool.
progression and all that stuff. And of course, we took pictures constantly.
Right.
But we had in February of 2020, we were due to open in June of 2020.
Okay.
February of 2020, I had 2 possible event things coming in. So we're still gearing for movies mostly, doing some concerts, and doing private events. And I had a group come to me that wanted to do a class reunion in July. So we're like 6 months out, 5 to 6 months out. So and it was still pretty rough in here. I mean, with sheetrock,
Yeah.
still had a lot of stuff to do, no seats, anything else. And they're like, man, you're going to be ready? I'm like, if you had seen what happened in the last 3 months, you'd know that we'd be done in 6, because almost the majority, the big major work was all done in that 3 or 4 month period. So I knew we were fine. Had another possibility of a national comedian that was touring and going to breweries. And Jason from Transport Brewery had contacted me, said, hey, this guy's traveling around. He goes to breweries, but we don't have enough space for him. Maybe we could do something together
Cool.
where we could have it there and then he could perform
There you go.
here.
There's that community
And I'm like, oh, I'm in
stuff.
it. I'm in. Yeah. So we're going to do that. So of all things, they were on 2 consecutive nights in July. The first 2 possible events we'd have in here were a Friday and a Saturday night in July.
Back?
Back to back.
Wow.
I'm like, whatever.
Go time.
We're going to do this. We're going to have to do it.
It'll
And
all be easy after this.
Yeah, sure. We'll just throw ourselves head first into it. And of course, within 1 month, everything slowed down. We could only have like 2 people in here at a time. It really slowed down. There was no way we were getting open. Well, then again, of course, the traveling comedian wasn't touring anymore. He couldn't do that. They can't have a class reunion, so that got canceled. Which, what are you going to do? That's not their fault,
Right.
So, and you just hope, hey, when everything comes back open, we'll be fine. So that happened, and then as soon as COVID really got deep and down and dirty, movie theaters started going bankrupt and closing and going bankrupt, and we're like,
they
uh-oh. Is this really viable anymore? What are we gonna? We're head first into this. We're already big money into this,
Right.
and here we go to the business plan again. Let's
Oh my
change this.
God.
Let's start with the concerts. Let's get some sound equipment in here. Let's put off getting the screen, the projector. Let's put that money into a soundboard, amplifiers, speakers, something. Let's start there, and change a little bit of the interior. Not a lot, but change it a little bit, and open in December of 2020.
Wow.
So we had a fundraiser gala on, I think, the December 8th. and then a concert on the 13th.
Okay.
Nick Schneblin came in here and played.
Okay.
On the 13th, our very first concert.
Now I can't. I mean, this whole time I've been, looking out at all these seats. Like for concerts, I mean, do most of your folks sit or?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Which is also an interesting story too.
Okay.
But so we got set up basically to do concerts. Bruce was our good connection to. He knew Frank from Knuckleheads.
Okay.
Frank was very instrumental in us getting our soundboard. Said, hey, this is what you need. This is what you.
Oh
you
man,
do.
that's exactly where I went. Was
Yeah.
how did you know what to buy?
Yeah.
Will you
So-
pivot that third or whatever time on the business plan, and now you need different gear?
Yeah, now we
like,
need different gear.
hope
Now
I
we gotta
buy the
figure out-
right stuff.
And I had done so much research on projectors and screens and all this stuff, and we were getting down to the end of it. It's like, man, where are we going to get the rest of this money? And of course, then the price of everything was going up, and
Yep.
we're trying to get it. Now we were very lucky. We were way through construction before construction costs really went up, because that
Okay.
was during COVID. Had we waited 2 years, we would have been in trouble,
Yeah.
because the construction costs went through the roof. But I count ourselves lucky. And when I tell people when we opened, they're like, "Oh man, you opened in COVID. That'd have been horrible." Yes, it wasn't the best, but we took it as a little bit of a blessing. We had to, when we first started doing the concerts, we had that one in December. We had a couple of them in January, and most of it revolved around like the blues guys that were just local
Okay.
blues guys.
Yeah.
And this guy's in a band, but he's also in this other band. So hey, let's get this. And my brother, same thing. This was his business to run, and
Because
he'd
you're
been-
still doing
doing the electrical
yeah,
supply.
okay.
And so basically what it became was, the very first year he was really running this, but it was the six of us. It was Chris and his wife, my sister-in-law Tammy, Bruce and his wife Alvina, and me and my wife Tara.
Nice.
There's our 6 employees first year.
Now,
We
do
were-
you say you consider yourselves lucky because you got to sort of ease into it?
That is
instead of
correct.
just
Instead
open
of
the
just
door?
all of a sudden, because we were so fearful. As much as everybody wants to open and just be packed,
You don't want to do it wrong.
We don't want to do it wrong. You don't want to look bad. So it just sort of, you didn't have a big audience, but you had enough to pay the bills.
Hey,
And
sometimes
I know.
that's all you need.
that's all you really need. And it wasn't paying the bills right away.
Of course.
But we were doing all the carrying costs. The 3 of us were doing the carrying costs through that. So once we had revenue coming in, and we weren't having to output, see, to us, at least to me, I felt like I didn't have that outgo of money, and now it was kind of covering itself.
God, that had to just like be such the load
It was
off.
yeah,
you know?
and
your
to-
brain like all of a sudden has new areas for bandwidth.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, I can think about other things now.
Yeah, I know.
Instead of just
because it
being-
was, and even like that first year in 2017, that whole summer, I can't think of anything else I did but just work on that and make sure that we could do what we could to get it.
that business plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
The business plan and all that, and I so badly wanted to be creative and design all this other stuff for it, and the interior and doing all this stuff. So the way my mind works is I have to use that as a reward. I have to do my work, and when I get my stuff I have to get done, I reward myself with being able to be creative and do the creative part of it. So I'd work on it for 2 or 3 days, and then I give myself a little bit of time to do some of the creative stuff. What's the interior going to look like?
Okay.
What are we going
okay.
to do? We're going to do these
Yeah,
things.
I like that.
Yeah.
I
So
can relate.
yeah, so that's, and actually music is one of those things I used to always do. I always played music. That was my kind of a reward to really get me motivated creativity wise. But for the stuff I had to do, I always had that. And I kind of look to my son for that. I remember texting him once and saying, "Send me some music. Tell me what to listen to."
How old is he?
He's 27.
Okay.
So this would have been in 2017.
Okay.
So yeah, early 20s. He was still in school.
Okay.
So send me some music. I want to listen to some music. and send me a couple of songs. And if you give me a couple of minutes, I can probably tell you what it was. There was a couple of songs that I can remember listening to repetitively because I'm like, oh, I love this.
Did he send you a playlist or something?
Just sent me like 5 or 6 different songs, different artists that I was listening to, and Robot, John Bellion.
Okay.
That was one of them. I remember that one. There's a couple other ones, and they were all over the board because he has
That's
kind
cool.
of kind of an all over the board kind of music thing, and he's got a big music background, so that was why I asked. And I use those as inspiration, and those are things I was listening to. But so yeah, that whole summer was just, and into the fall was just focus on that. But I was still doing design work. It's when I came up with like the font, all the letters,
Sure.
all that stuff. And even at that time, when I tell everybody the A in Aztec, because of course, with a little bit of history on the theater, it originally was the Mission Theater. In the late 40s, Dickinson bought it, renamed it the Aztec. And they had the Aztec kind of theme with Indian heads and all that. And you can see the old pictures with the neons and stuff like that. But the A was kind of curved and in a straight line. And the cross piece didn't quite connect.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that was my inspiration. And I think I drew that A about 1,000 times. And when I came up with it, when I hit it, the one that's out there now, I knew that was it. And the first person I took it to get feedback was Wade.
Oh.
We sat down and talked. We were over at his theater, and I said, I got to show you something. And I want you to tell me, because he was big on branding, and he knew we always seemed to meet. He loved meeting and talking at Winstead's. Over off a row.
I mean,
and he talked about that early on. He goes, look at that. You can just, all they need is that little piece of their spire up there, and you know what it is.
1,000%.
Good branding.
Yeah.
He goes, you just need something. And I showed him that A, and he goes, that's it. He goes, that's perfect in there. He said, you need something iconic that would go with that, something else. But he goes, I love the letter. Because I was going to go from there and take off of there. And I said something to Bruce. And Bruce goes, well, what about the front of the building? So if you look at our logo, it is our A over the front of the building.
Okay.
And I took it back to Wade again. And he goes, yeah, that's it.
Nice.
Like, just so matter of fact. And it did. For such a simple thing. And Bruce being Bruce, he's like, well, why don't you see the front of the building? I'm like, how do he? Oh yeah, as a very iconic shape, and it could be a very simple version of it with the A over. Yeah, so so that's the building.
Very cool.
With the A.
I'm really glad you liked my idea. Also, thanks again for those 90 days.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, yeah, it was fun, and there, just a kind of a tie back in. That was music was the part of the creativity where I would just listen.
Yeah.
And I can remember those times of what I was listening to and why, as the creative process went, and even designing the interior space to try to stay. I mean, I wanted to stay true to an Art Deco style.
I think you did.
Well, and I hope so. We've gotten really good feedback on it, and I kind of delved into the Art Deco style. And the reason I like the Art Deco style for this space, I love Art Deco in general, but when I was reading up on it, I knew when it was, and it was right in the time of the French, the Art Nouveau, and into the Art Deco, which was a kind of a shortened version of what they were using in French. And then it went into the modern and the streamline and the some of the other ones. So I really focused specifically on Art Deco so that it wouldn't be Art Nouveau or modern or streamline. I didn't want it to look like a 50s diner.
Right.
And I didn't want it to look like a French version of the early French version, which would have been Art Nouveau, which was, there again, an organic, lots of curves and things like this. It was very specific. So I stayed true to it. And I remember my brother telling me one time, he showed me a picture. He goes, hey, I got this piece that I think would work good in the staircase. And he showed it to me, and I go, no, it won't fit. He goes, well, no, we can make it fit. I go, no, decoratively wise, it won't fit. And he kind of got mad at me. He goes, well, I guess I just don't understand what you're doing. And I go, it's fine. It's not for you to understand.
Right, yeah.
It's for me to do, and I don't want to do it. Had a little bit of a glimpse of, I think, what Wade thought when people were, oh, you got to have this here and you got to have this here, that it was getting in his way. So that's why I think that was. But So I focused on it very heavily of what it was, the notion of what I wanted it to look like, even though I knew it's not what it ever looked like. But the Art Deco style that was really from like the 20s and 30s, the name didn't come around until the 60s.
Right.
They named it 40 years later.
Right.
They go, well, we call that Art
Yeah.
Deco now.
Well, it's like in writing, modernism and postmodernism.
Yes.
It's like they're calling it modernism, like as postmodernism is happening.
Yeah, that's
They're
right.
like,
Yeah, because they look back.
What
and do
about
it.
this? Right? Oh,
Yeah.
Come back in 20 years.
20 years,
It's
and
like,
then we'll. So I thought it was kind of neat because when I early on when I'd ask people what kind of time frame you think this is from, half the people would say 20s and 30s, and the other ones would say 50s and 60s.
I think
And I go, yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
That's exactly
exactly.
what I wanted.
Well, it's a very, very beautiful place.
Thank you.
I'm excited to learn a little bit about the history of it, and look forward to seeing some pictures, and maybe even I'll check out those YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But I really like that music sort of was a backdrop for some of
Yeah.
the creativity piece, and that some of that came from your son.
Right.
You're born and raised here
Yes.
in
In Shawnee.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, not too far from here.
And so you have your brother, yourself. Are there other siblings?
My sister.
Sister.
My sister. Yeah.
And how did mom and dad meet?
My parents, let's see, my dad was, I'm trying to remember how they met. They were from around here too. My mom was from Prairie Village.
Okay.
My dad was from this area because I think my grandparents were from this area
Okay.
all the time. I can't remember exactly how they met. My dad was in the, I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. It wasn't full military, but he was in a portion of the military.
Like reserve?
Like
or
the
something?
reserves
Okay,
or something
okay.
like that. He went there, and then because they always told the story that when he was there, she moved, which I thought was kind of funny. When he come back and he goes, "Hey, you're in a different house," or didn't know where she was.
Right.
I don't think it's exactly like that.
Right.
But that's how I always remember.
Right.
But always from this area.
Okay.
My childhood home, they moved in to about a year before I was born. So I think 64, 65. My brother and sister are 4 and 5 years older than me.
Okay.
But they did live in a different house, and then we moved to the house because when I grew up, I was in one house.
Yeah.
So when you told me you had, all these different,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my wife and I still live in the same house, our very first house we
Right.
bought.
That's funny.
So we just
Well,
don't move.
So,
it's just weird.
But do you have memories of them, your mom and dad, putting music on in the home when you
Yes.
guys were little? And
Yes.
what kind of stuff were they into?
So I remember sitting at the kitchen table and the stereo or whatever, even with the 8-track,
Yeah.
not really the big console one, but kind of a stereo in there with some speakers. And my dad would put on Oak Ridge Boys,
Okay.
Statler Brothers,
There you go.
Johnny Cash.
Nice.
Of the three that I remember because I loved it. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of neat.
Yeah.
It was still country-ish, but and then there were some takeoffs of that, but that's usually where it was.
Okay. Was mom ever putting stuff on, or was she just leaving
Not that I
to dad?
remember.
Okay.
I think that was
Sure.
just part of it, and we were always somewhat musical. My brother played guitar.
Okay.
My sister started out on cornet or trumpet. She moved to the French horn. When I started out on cornet
Okay.
too, because I used hers.
Yeah.
And then, and we went up from there. My sister, of us all, I would say my sister is probably the one that's most musically inclined. She still plays handbells. She still plays French horn. She's in the Kansas City Wind Symphony.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice.
yeah, I mean, she's very involved in a lot of that, much more musically than I am. I would say even more so. I consider myself pretty musically inclined.
Sure.
My son, even more so again, he's one that music influences a lot of, has always been. We started him out on the piano when he was really young.
Okay.
Maybe 7.
Okay.
When he went to band and wanted to play, he wanted to play trombone. and he played trombone all the way through college.
God, I just watched a cool Instagram reel a couple hours ago. Trey Anastasio from Fish. He's been doing this series where he goes around and finds people from the band's crew.
Oh yeah,
and or his band, and what are you doing? And so he'll
more so than just the members of the band, all of the crew, and
like he's people that go up on with pulleys and equipment and change out.
Oh yeah,
to
all the rigging
guys in the trailer running all the computer. And
yeah.
Today he went up to Natalie, or the one that I saw today. He went up to Natalie Cressman, who plays trombone in his Trey Anastasio band, and she was warming up before a show or having her daily rehearsal or whatever. And I mean, he must have talked to her for 15 minutes, and a lot of it was over my head. Because she's talking about how there's like 7 different spots,
7 positions,
and then talking about keys and how you change the pitch by the way
your embouchure.
I mean and it was super because she's
very technical
and intelligent, and she could like he would ask questions and she would be like, well, it's kind of like on the guitar this happens, and I mean.
Just kind of relating.
And the caption was like, how she does all these interesting things on this odd piece of bent metal.
Which is true.
It was, and she did a whole bunch of demonstrations. I was like, this is wild. Like, very cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you an interesting story from my son. When he was in high school, they'd go to state competitions, and they'd do their solos and their quartets and things like that, and they just do them in classroom. They'd go to like a school, and that's where they have the they'd go to state, and they'd be able to play on these their solos and ensembles, and they get bigger and bigger. They specialize in all this, and he said one of them that they're doing is a quartet, which was if I remember right was tuba, euphonium, and 2 trombones.
Oh wow!
And just kind of an interesting bass line of a quartet. And I got to sit in and listen to them, and they sat down in a classroom, horrible acoustics, and this thing just sounded phenomenal.
Wow!
I mean, just beautiful. And it, sometimes when I think about that, I think is it just biased because he's my son or anything? But I think I'd be able to tell him, that was horrible if it ever was, and it just wasn't. It's just beautiful, and. They did very well on it, and I asked him afterwards. I was saying, how was that set up? And he said, "Oh, well, it's really only set up for 1 trombone. Trombone, I can't remember what he said. It may have been trombone, 2 euphoniums, and a tuba."
Okay.
And I go, "Oh, okay." He goes, "So I just transposed it from the euphonium." I go, "Did you write it?" He goes, "No, I just did it." What do you mean you just did it?
E equals MC squared, man. Come on, what are you talking
about?
Did
it. You just transpose it, and you just play it in the different key, because you got to change the key because you're on a different instrument.
I'm already lost.
And I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and of itself, and it was just a beautiful piece. And when he was in high school, he played in jazz band, and they had him play the keyboards every once in a while on the ones, which is more of a focal type instrument. He liked playing trombone. I mean, he loved playing piano, but it was nothing like he liked playing trombone.
Right.
And that's what he played in college.
Some serious personality to it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he just loves it. And, it was, part of, why he did, he was in music performance in college and everything. So, yeah, I was just like, that's amazing.
Nice.
But having that piano background helps, too, because you learn treble clef and bass clef at the same time. So he can move around. I only learned treble clef, so I treat bass clef like a foreign language. Okay, well, if it's here, so on bass clef it's here, and it's this, I have to do it that way. But he did the transposition on the fly.
Donde está?
Yeah, that's right. Como está usted?
Well, I'm interested in, our progressions as people sort of along the life's journey, and music that's important to us in certain times, and music that's with us forever. And one of the pieces of fascination to me is always like, okay, so Johnny Cash and the Oak Ridge Boys, and who was the third?
Statler Brothers.
Statler Brothers. So like this is this is the music that is around and on in your parents' home.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like of course music, gives us joy in ways that other things don't, but it's also sort of like furniture. Like I remember that couch, I remember that, Statler Brothers record, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And then something happens where you reach a certain level of maturity, or your own personality starts to bud. And at some point, like you discover an artist or an album on your own.
Right.
And that becomes a core memory, or maybe it's your first purchase and that's the root of your collection. So was there a first, by the way, thank you for doing this and being here and being kind enough to get me a list. But
Sure.
beyond the list that you gave me, was there something that was that you first fell in love with or first acquired, or
Yeah.
what was it?
So it was really strange. It's kind of neat how you kind of draw into that. So while you were talking, I'm thinking about what was the change? What was, because I'll sit and listen to an Oak Ridge Boys or stuff,
Of
but
course.
it's not my forte.
Right.
Johnny Cash is.
My dad had Oak Ridge Boys 8 tracks in
Yeah.
his van,
Yeah.
and he used to love this annual function called Possum Trot.
Okay.
And it was like a Renaissance fair, but for like the West.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Cattle Town and
Oh,
cowboys.
nice.
And one of the years, I don't know the details, but at some point he gave the Oak Ridge Boys a ride in his van.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was like, couldn't be prouder.
Wouldn't-
Like,
oh,
you know
that's
what I'm
so
saying?
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get it. Not my
Yeah.
forte, but I do love that
Yeah.
little element of.
Yeah. So I always think about that because those are the three groups that I remember very specifically that we were listening to in the background that he enjoyed listening to. But what was it that turned me to other forms of music? And
Right.
that gave me my basis for it. And of course, I started playing trumpet in 4th grade.
Okay.
So we do that. But I will tell you, I know for sure, I know what the very first album was I had. I still own it.
Okay.
But besides that, I remember making the conscious decision that whatever I was listening to on the radio at the time, I was listening to what I would consider, like kids kind of weird pop or something like that, or listening to my own music or something like that. But I thought, man, I'm getting older. I probably should start listening to KY 102. I actually remember that. I made a conscious decision. I guess this is what we do, because I had an older brother and sister,
Yeah.
at 4 and 5 years older than me. That's what they're listening to. I guess it's time for me to start listening to that.
I remember getting having a similar, it's like 71 WHB and then Q190, all these
Q104.
KUDL,
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, like I remember getting my first KY 102 bumper sticker. It was
Yeah.
black with the yellow,
yellow letters,
and
yeah.
the hippo.
And the hippo,
I was like,
yeah.
I'm cool now, guys.
Cool now.
I don't
That's
know.
right.
Did you guys see?
Yeah, I'm listening to this. You can hear it out of my car because
Yeah.
I turn it up a lot. But I listened to that, and it wasn't that. It was because I wanted to hear that music. It was I thought that was the natural progression of things. I need to start listening to this,
Yeah.
and I can't even think of what it was. But the funny thing about that was it had nothing to do with the first album that I had. So the first album I ever owned was Diana Ross Presents. Do you know this?
It sounds familiar.
The Jackson 5.
Oh no, I wouldn't have.
Yep.
I
Still own it.
Okay.
Motown album.
Wow.
Diana Ross Presents the Jackson
So
5.
is she like a producer or something?
I guess so. Or
Okay.
she was the one that was going to introduce them to the world because she was the one that found them or whatever it was. So she got a
Dr.
little
Dre
bit of the
didn't
rights
do
there.
that with Snoop or Eminem. He
Yeah.
didn't say present, like
Yeah.
make a big marquee of it.
Yeah.
But that's
Dr.
cool.
Dre presents. Yeah.
How about first concert or first memorable
Okay, so
concert?
first actual concert, my sister took me.
Okay.
Chuck Mangione. Remember Chuck Mangione?
yeah.
Feels so good. Big flugelhorn. So, yep,
I
that's
love
the one.
that tune.
Yeah. So, and she'll probably correct me on this. I think it was at Memorial Hall, Municipal Auditorium. I can't remember what it was.
Sure.
In KCK.
That's
I remember being
that's
way back.
Memorial. Yeah.
Okay. That was really my first concert.
Okay.
She took me to that. Me and a good friend of mine that played trumpet. We went and saw Chuck Mangione. You know,
Were you entertained the whole time?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about that.
It wasn't
tune.
just about that tune.
Okay.
You know, it was like, wow, this is
That
and somebody being popular playing something similar to like I was playing.
I think that's the title track of the record that it came out on, perhaps.
Yeah. Feels so good. Yeah.
And that whole outfit was like insanely talented. Like I always just knew that song.
Yeah. And
never knew where it came from.
If you look up, and I don't know this for sure, but I can think back, and I think some of the house band players or the players that played with him were obviously from other bands, which is common. I mean, you always saw that in the 50s and 60s. They had house players that were, you know, people you were like, wow, how are they doing that? You know, Elvis.
Right.
Like, and what comes to mind is things like the Jordanaires,
Yeah.
which was Elvis's background, you know, and things which were super talented in themselves, but in the time, hey, we're back up for, you know, the biggest artists in the world.
Yeah.
So, and I think I think his other performers were also, you know, very good performers in their own right. Now, whether they were, you know, popular or not, I don't know. But to me, that was amazing because the popular songs of the time weren't. I mean, you'd still see, you know, Herb Alpert. You'd see
Tijuana Brass.
The Tijuana Brass. You'd see, you know, I loved when he had Rise. That was one of the big things, you know, when Herb Alpert played Rise. But they, there wasn't a lot of instrumental at that time, and that was kind of popular. It wasn't obviously not super popular, but
it's like
obviously
a 7 or 8 minute long track too, which is doesn't
crazy.
fit into the radio.
Yeah.
They must have had a radio edit version.
Oh, I'm sure
they were feeding us,
Yeah. But that was my first concert. But my first actual what I would consider a rock concert was Steve Miller Band
Oh wow, I bet that was fun.
at Starlight.
Starlight, heck yeah.
Buddy of mine and I, and it was before we could drive, or right about when we could drive, because I remember either his mom dropped us off and my mom picked us up, or vice versa. Because, you know, it was, I mean, Starlight, which was, you know, a fantastic venue and always has been, but right there in Swope Park.
But it got like, you know, 20-ish, 25 years ago. Did it get some facelift?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
it
definitely
looks
upgraded a lot.
incredible right now,
Yes.
and it's a very
Yeah,
fun place to see a show.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always looked exactly like
No,
that.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they did some upgrades and things too. And that's probably about right. Probably about 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
So, but I saw Steve Miller, and I tell people that story because to me it's funny because I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And everybody's like, oh yeah, because everybody from that's like a big 70s rocker kind of thing, and even up to now, most people can recognize Steve Miller.
Yeah.
But when I say it was my first concert and they kind of see my age, they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. You know, and then I tell them which tour it was. It was the Abracadabra tour.
Okay.
Totally 80s.
Okay, I was going to say like
Yeah.
82.
80s. Nothing like, you know, Fly Like an Eagle stuff
well,
and the Joker and all that. It was Abracadabra.
I love me some Abracadabra.
Me
I mean,
too.
that'll get you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, but see, you see my dilemma on that. What I think is so funny about it, because when somebody says name a Steve Miller album or a Steve Miller track or something like that, Abracadabra will not be usually not in the first three.
I'm glad you said that, because I was in this whatever phase. Okay, you know, not necessarily the oldies anymore, and trying to branch out, and Abracadabra came out, and I was like, this slaps. I love this. And then fast forward all these years later, when I'm like parked for an eternity in the camp of classic rock, and Fly Like an Eagle, I was like, wow, there's some really fascinating things happening in there, and I'm building a collection. So the way that I'm going about it, unfortunately, is I'm buying greatest hits, and if it really grabs me, then I start getting all the individual records.
Yeah.
The Steve Miller Band's greatest hits is great.
Yes.
I don't know that they might have done 2 volumes, but I don't think Abracadabra's on volume 1.
No, probably
but you
not,
get
because they had such a great catalog.
I know, and there and more. You know, there's some cool tracks that are like kind of whatever, but there's also some that have a lot of fascinating time signature kind of trippy things.
Yeah, even into the 80s.
Yeah, and so then by the time I'm old enough, and however I learned, wait, that guy did Abracadabra, that song that I remember from, you know,
way
funny.
back. Yeah. Well, and I kind of gauge it in the fact of there were so many really good 70s rock bands
Yeah.
that still had hits in the 80s, but they were different.
The Eagles.
Eagles, Boston, REO Speedwagon.
I did do this from time to time, but I just did a real heavy sort of vow renewal reconciliation with Third Stage. Because again, it's like that comes out. I'm hearing Amanda,
Yep.
but then I discover Boston and their self-titled debut, and Don't Look Back, which are just top to back full of absolute bangers.
Hits. Oh yeah,
and Third Stage felt like this much more like soft. But anyway, I've here just in the last couple months. Drug it out, and I mean, I really, really like that record.
really.
Like
Their third.
yeah.
Is that the one with Amanda on it?
It is.
I have a good story about that.
It opens
too,
with
so.
Amanda.
Yeah.
I've always had an affinity for Cool the Engines.
Okay.
Because they do, it's sort of like we got to let turn this party down just a bit, but they do a whole lot of changes
the bouncing around.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a different feel than everything was in the 70s.
Oh my gosh.
But it's not as it's still a little electronic kind of the
Well,
80s, but not.
We're also actually I used some audio snippets from We're Ready Now, which is another. It's a slower.
Okay, so now I'm not familiar with that one yet.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
But there's a really
Kind of bass line kind of thing, yeah.
The first guy I took guitar lessons from taught me about Tom Scholz being an MIT genius and developing the Rockman.
Okay.
And I just thought they've had their sound across, definitely those first three albums and probably since. But it seems like the liner notes for Third Stage are like really extensive.
Really?
And it's not just credits and listings; it's this whole story.
Story of, yeah.
And I think for that record was when he finally, I think they lost a couple musicians or went a different direction from the first two. But I think they finally, if you read it, it's like there's nothing electronic. There's no synth. This is all real
guitars
stuff coming through the Rockman, which I think he ultimately patented. And it's a special kind of amp or mixer or something like that. But
Just
if
gave
you
him that sound, and
I have plugged into one before, and you're like, oh shit!
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's very unique. And, yeah. So when I was in college, I had a buddy of mine that was more into and he wasn't really a music guy, but he was more into 70s music than he was into 80s music, and I was more into 80s music. I mean, this was the 80s.
Yeah.
This was mid to late 80s when I was in college. And I remember him telling me one day that his girlfriend, and the three of us hung out a lot. He looked at me and he said, Sherry likes Boston, but she only likes Amanda. And he goes, I was pretty happy when I figured out that she liked Boston, but then it's Amanda? Really? Amanda? And he said it that way.
There's some shredding in there.
Yeah,
it's a love song, but there's some shredding.
It's kind of it's what everybody did in the 80s. You get it was their power ballad.
Yeah.
And but it was just the way he said it. But it's Amanda.
Yeah.
With
stank on it.
Because he was, all into the, I just thought that was funny.
That is funny.
The only, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll have to listen to that a little bit more.
Well, listen, thank you again for doing this. This is super fun. And we spoke on the phone a handful of weeks ago, and I was doing an episode with Shane Powers from Sirens in the Suburbs, who I think is gigging here.
Yep, that's right.
On the Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th,
in October.
Yeah.
So I reached out because, it's like we had that conversation, and like your original Alexa, they're listening. It's like the next day I was on Twitter, and the Aztec's Twitter handle was just right there.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'll be darned. And so, and then, follow the account. And then I went to the website. I think looking just general curiosity, but also looking for that show, because it was when we recorded, it was kind of like, he sort of was like, I don't know if I should say anything yet, but we're looking to do.
Yeah,
and then
I don't think we had it. We were talking about it that time. We knew he was going to do it, but we didn't have the details yet.
Right. Well,
'cause we really didn't even get the details completely and fully until literally just the other day.
right.
Yeah.
Well, so anyway, I'm going through the calendar but also just looking to see, how many shows is this place doing? Who are they booking? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by the fact that there were not only a very healthy number of acts booked, but a very large number of cover bands. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I might have mentioned this on the phone. At one point, I was like, this can't be accurate. This is, where are all these folks coming from? Are they all local, or some of them touring in? It's I don't know if it's more of a phenomenon or less of a phenomenon than I'm making it out to be, but it totally caught me off guard.
You're talking about like a lot of the tribute bands,
yes,
the ones that are very specific.
Yes.
Yeah, it is kind of odd, but there's a level of dedication of just over and above just being a musician. And
right.
to tribute and say, I'm going to do this group.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, from what I understand and have come to realize, is it stems from a love of a very specific type of music and an idea to be fully entertained.
Yeah.
And doing all of them are like that they enjoy the music. I always ask the question. The question was it music you liked, or did you just figure out you sounded like them? And it's just music they like, and they just happen to sound kind of like them.
Okay.
Because they don't always sound exactly like them. But when the show is on, if you can put on a good show, it's more about audience interaction and having a good time and remembering that. And the more I've seen them, the more I understand that when you go to a regular concert, so if I was to go to a concert now and see somebody that I really like,
Steve Miller.
Let's go see Steve Miller. They're going to play some B tracks. They're going to play some of their lesser known stuff. I was at an Everclear concert at the Midland one time. I think it was Midland, years ago. And somebody kept yelling, play Father of Mine. And the lead singer goes, if we play it now, you're all going to leave. How do you think this works? It was so matter of fact.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, he's right. So, but, the groups want you to hear some of those B tracks that maybe you didn't listen to the first time, especially now when you can just buy the one song.
Yeah.
So they want you to listen to those. When you go see a tribute band, you're going to hear, randomly you're going to hear a kind of a cool B-side or a deep track or something like that. And there are bands that really delve into that. But you're going to see a whole concert of hits.
Sure. But that, I think, if most of the concert is hits, like you really need to tilt the ratio in the who we are as individuals and musicians versus what we're doing, which is covering this portion of this catalog.
Right.
And a lot of those hits, like you want to lean, I think, more in the direction of sounding like the original artist versus being yourself. But with those B-sides, I think you can tilt it the other way.
Yeah, you can say this is our version of it.
Yeah, and make it cool, and maybe people will be like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, especially if you hadn't heard it before.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to remember that. I know there's going to be a good example of it, of hearing a song, maybe by an artist. Oh, I have a really good example of this. You ready?
Yeah.
Hurt by Johnny Cash,
Oh.
the remake. I was sitting in my driveway waiting for a load of gravel to arrive. And they came on the radio and said, this is one off of his American recordings. And I think this was one of my scratched on my list of albums. Because it's one of the more newer Johnny Cash, the ones that Rick Rubin was producing, where they're doing these newer songs. That one in particular is good because a lot of hits on it, but it has Hurt. So I heard it and I'm like, I was just mesmerized.
Yeah.
I love a good song that will just give me chills. It was dark and it was very much Johnny Cash. Had no idea it was a remake. It was a cover. When I figured it out, which was like 5 minutes later when they said it, that Nine Inch Nails did it, I thought, I got to hear this song. And if you want, to me, the same exact song to mean so much to two completely different people in completely different styles, that's the song. That is so moving. Either one of them you hear. Johnny Cash's whole life is in that song. And it's so heartfelt, and the way he twists it in his own heart.
Myself.
Yeah, and that deep, and then hear it
feel.
in Trent Reznor's off-key, twisted drug thing that is nothing what Johnny was, even though Johnny kind of has a little bit of a drug portion in there. But,
Yeah.
but man, Trent Reznor's one, I thought, I'm going to hate this song because I love Johnny so much. I love them both in a totally different way.
I think there's a famous moment in an interview or something like that where Trent was asked, "Have you? What do you?
I'm not
Have you
familiar
heard
with-
Johnny's
yeah. Oh.
cover, or what do you think about Johnny?" And he was just like, "That's Johnny's song now." Like,
Yes, that's right.
Because
That's right.
he was
goes,
so.
Oh, it's not even my song.
Yeah.
Anymore. Yeah, that's right. But I don't think that's true. He may feel that way.
Well,
but I see what his
think he
point
was.
was.
I think
from
he
the
was
heart.
doing a
Tipping
little
his hat
hat.
to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Most definitely was. But to some extent, he was right. He made it his own.
Yeah.
And but Trent kind of gave him that's not my song anymore. Well, no,
Right.
not that version. But
Right.
and I thought, this is, just this weird juxtaposition of keys and the way it is, and the extension of it. So, but that was kind of interesting that having a cover
Sure.
that was just as powerful as the original,
Yeah.
and doing it in your own way.
So I want to move in the direction. I want to break for the restroom real quick, and I
Okay.
want to move in the direction of your list. But before we do that, I'm thinking of. I'm trying to picture this a variety of artists that you've had perform, and you said you had a funny story about folks being seated or not being seated or something like that.
Oh,
or
yeah.
the seats
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. So we, like I say, originally we were going to be a movie theater.
Yeah.
So we spent quite a bit of money on just getting some of these seats. Some of them came with the theater, but we had to have them reupholstered. So that was fairly costly. Having them
course.
installed, we had all these
It
ideas.
looks like an expensive collection of seats.
It's a bit, but it is still a little nostalgic because they all came out of the old Crown Center Hotel Theater. They were red and gold cloth. We had them reupholstered in the black vinyl just to kind of blend in. It would have been kind of neat to have some vintage seats, but we knew once everybody was in here, if we had something that was nostalgic to the area, it'd be nice to be comfortable. So we also lost a few seats because we needed to spread them out a little bit. So
Yeah.
that was kind of our thought process, but we wanted it in here as a theater. Then as you do it as a concert, you're like, that's okay, we have all the seats. But if we wanted to rent it out for a wedding event or something like that, we could just remove some of these seats and then put them back. And the people that do the seats are like, you have no idea what's involved in putting these in and taking them out.
They don't look like they come
They
out.
do not go in and out. I have pictures of the progression of them installing them, and they bolt them to the floor
Yeah.
on just the armrest, and then the seats are put in the middle.
Okay.
So then if you take them off, and I know you have the view of it here, and it might be where you can see it behind me, but there are exactly 13 seats in each row. But so you can look over my shoulder and look at them and notice they're not all lined up.
No.
Because they're different widths. And there's 5 or 6 different widths of those chairs.
Seriously?
Yes.
I mean, I'm seeing it now. I wouldn't
18,
have noticed.
19, 19 and a half, 20. I think there's more than 6. So they're spaced, and they're spaced specifically. So they're designed and laid out by the Cy Young was the one that did it. Nancy from Cy Young did it. And they told us, oh, yeah, you have all these different size seats and different angles, and you want to spread them out and do all this.
What?
And isn't that wild?
Wait, so intentionally,
Yes, very intentionally.
because
They are. Because you if you had them all exactly the same and they were all lined up, you'd all be lined up
Of
like
course,
this.
yes, I
So
get
you
that.
have all this thing. And most people just think they're all lined up, but when you stand up here on the stage, you can look back
Yeah.
and you can say, hey, Well, oh, that's right. They don't all line up.
But
Even
there,
walking
but
down,
there are 5-ish
there's at
different
least 5
sizes
different
of chairs
sizes.
out there in this.
Yeah,
right.
different widths.
Wow.
And they have to figure that out. That now if we have some 18s, now we have to have some 22s, and they're putting a
Because
specific
it's all got to add up to.
to the exact
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So
Fascinating.
So so that was part of it, and I had, we have most of our demographic is older. We have some cover bands and tribute bands and things like that, and we've had some younger audiences in here. We've had some heavy metal bands. A friend of mine came in with his band Full Stack Fury with their friend Shadow Sin, and they had another group. Third Floor was in here, much younger group, heavy metal, just shook the building. It was fantastic.
And everybody was sitting down.
No,
Oh.
the younger the audience, more that are standing.
Yeah, of course.
They were all, and I thought we're going to get a noise complaint on this one. Somebody's going to go. So sometimes when it gets too loud or if the sound is a little off, somebody will come to us and say, hey, it's too loud or something like that.
Patron?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just, and there are some seats that are better than others. There's some that you'll lose a little bit of this, but it's very rare in here. It's very acoustically sound. So, but sometimes they'll get a little loud for somebody and they'll say, I feel like it's too loud or something like that. Not very often, but sometimes they do. I was in the office up there. They were playing, and it was just shaking the place. And so I came out on the balcony to listen, and I had to look to see what was going on. And everybody was in the first 4 rows just packed to the stage. And they were just head banging and just going at it. And it was amazing. And it sounded good. It was just louder than I was used to. So I'm looking at that going, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I've had other people say, well, you need to take out some seats because we need a dance floor or we need this.
Yeah.
And I was talking to, I'm going to drop a name here. It's Stretch. You know Stretch?
Oh, Grinders.
Yes. Have you met Stretch?
Not officially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need to meet Stretch.
I worked for him for
Oh, yeah?
50 seconds and never
was it.
returned for my paycheck.
Okay.
But-
So another one of those people I love to sit and talk with because he's just full of information. So when he did his concert in here, and he did it with his group, brought in a couple other bands, and they played here. And I tell people this story. This is what was out of his mouth. He said, and it was a short term. We only had like 3 or 4 weeks to get this ready to go. But he wanted to do it. I knew he had a lot of followers. One of the first things out of his mouth was, okay, well, part of those, excuse me, part of this, the ticket sales, I want to go to a charity. Now, I'll figure out one because he's got multiple ones he likes to give to and everything like that. That statement alone told me where he was and the type of person he was. That he's kind of chaotic and he's fun, but he has all this stuff and everything. But that alone said a lot, really meant a lot to me. Okay, this guy he really has a big heart. And from that point on, I'm like, I'm going to listen to everything this guy has to say. I want to work together with him. He's got some experience in this industry. I want to know all this stuff. So they played, they did all this, and I was sitting talking to him, and I asked him, I go, we've had these younger bands in here, and I'd like to get a younger group and doing all this. And I said, but I know you have, and he has big groups that come to the Crossroads and stuff. So I'm trying to get some information from him. And he looked right at me, and he goes, you want to know how to get a younger demographic in here? Get some. I go, yeah, what's the secret? He goes, take all your seats out. And I go, what? He goes, take your seats out. Said, the older demographic wants to sit down, but the younger ones don't.
I mean,
And it was out of his mouth, and I'm like, well, that seems weird. Took me about 10, 15 seconds. I'm thinking, he's right.
Right.
So for us to cater to a younger crowd in general, if I wanted to do that, I have to sacrifice
part of your vision.
part of my vision and part of our established demographic, our community people,
Yeah.
because they're older.
Yeah.
That's tough.
That is tough. And there's
So-
no middle of the road for
there's
that.
kind
It's-
of.
Oh,
No,
there
there's
is?
a middle.
Okay.
So well, I'm a numbers guy. So there's a middle. So the middle is maybe you take out some of them, but you make it where you can still sit so that we can put seats in here we can move, or maybe we change the seats so we can move them around a little bit. And that's what we're working on now.
After all that.
Yeah.
went into-
So I knew we weren't going to take any seats out at first. We spent too much money and too much
Sure.
time in it. But when you have somebody say something so matter-of-factly that is so very right, you go, okay, I am not going to disregard my core group, my people that have supported us from day one. I am not going to forsake them and go, sorry, I need this other group. I'm going to look at a chance to say, I think we can bring in a crossover, keep my core group happy, but also somewhat cater. And we're going to look at taking some seats out, but making them more temporary where we can move some seats.
Sure.
It's not the easiest, and it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
But
I mean, and then, would you be able to find a home for the ones that you replace with temporary or? Okay.
Sure. So
Because it looks
one-
like they're all still in very good
Oh
shape.
yeah. And there's more of them. We have
Oh,
a few
boy.
extra ones
Oh,
because,
boy.
because you always have to have extra ones.
Sure.
One of the things my brother was big on was, we always had to have extra pieces and parts because, people stand on seats, people break seats. It just happens. So
People spill blue curacao.
Yeah, carousel on the ones. Now, although the chairs are good,
Yeah.
the floor not so
Right.
much, but concrete floor from 1927 and it still sucks in
Wow.
blue carousel. But
Well, it's I'm literally picturing. I mean, I've been going to shows since I don't know 8th grade, 9th grade, somewhere in there, and I see a fair amount still.
Yeah.
And it's really wild to have gone all the way from. If there's a way to get front row,
Yeah.
or what and now all the way it's like. Is this a seated event? Because I am not going to want to stand the whole time.
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, I want to be close to the bathroom and close to the beer stand, and
Yeah,
and I
that's
don't
right.
want to. I don't want to miss a whole bunch of the show standing in
Yeah.
line or traveling to get to it. So,
Yep.
I would like to have a seat.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a
get-
crossover.
and I get that not everybody does.
That's right.
And I'm fine
yeah.
with that.
Yeah, because as it turns out, you're usually in your late 20s or early 30s, and you don't need a seat.
Nope.
And I remember when I was in my late
Yep.
20s, early 30s, and
course.
even in my 40s, I didn't need a seat.
Yeah.
But there was a time.
Yeah.
I went and saw a concert at the Truman,
Okay.
and was totally surprised when we're standing there going, there is not a single seat in here. There's not a. So I was leaning against the wall
Yeah.
for a while,
Yeah.
enjoying the concert,
Yeah.
and then it was like, "Ooh, this is rough." Now you
Yeah.
can get seats; they're up in there. There's like balcony things.
I've
that
been
you have
I've been to a show at the Truman where it was full of
Oh, yeah.
folding chairs.
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they didn't do that for us.
No.
Yeah, it was definitely a younger crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to move in the direction of your list.
Okay.
But first, I'd like to take a quick restroom break. And
Okay. Seems
be
like
right
a plan.
back. All right. You good? You comfy?
Yep, I'm good.
Good. All right. Well, we're back. Like I mentioned, appreciate you getting me a list. You had, if I remember correctly, you had a list of 5 and 4 that almost made the cut, and
Yeah.
we'll go through your 5 and touch on the 4 just briefly.
Yeah.
But if we sort of explore it in chronological order of release, I believe that puts us starting in 1975 with "Wish You Were Here."
Yeah.
Pink Floyd, 9th of 15 records for them, 5 tracks. It really always blows my mind that there's only 5 songs on that
5
record.
songs, yeah.
44 minutes. A whole lot of tongue-in-cheek music industry critique. Weird, a lot of this stuff is about Syd Barrett, and he makes this appearance to the studio when they're recording. Do you know this story?
I don't know the story.
So, Shine on You Crazy Diamond, Wish You Were Here. A lot of that is, so Syd Barrett was like the founding
yeah.
member, 66 and 68, I think, were Piper at the Gates of Dawn and
I didn't realize it went back that far.
Saucer Full of Secrets. Those are their first 2.
Gotcha.
And the only 2 that Sid is present for.
Okay.
And David Gilmour comes in. Their sound completely changes for the better by far and large.
Yeah.
And so and also there's some strife in the time surrounding the writing and the recording of this, because they're like not necessarily getting along. I think they all have things going on
Yeah.
it's not the same vibe that it was, through More and Adam Hart Mother and Obscured by Clouds and ultimately Dark Side, which is the predecessor to this one, and like what the biggest record in the world probably at the time. So there's turmoil, and then so they're channeling this, and then Syd Barrett shows up at this. They like don't even recognize. It's very, very weird and bizarre.
Oh wow!
And up to for a chunk, up to and including Dark Side, Alan Parsons is producing for them, and
Yeah, I do
leaves.
remember something about that. Yeah.
Decides to, maybe they need some new direction for this one, but also like I'm gonna go do this thing called the Alan Parsons Project. But yeah, there's a Gilmore quote. It was a very difficult period, I have to say. All your childhood dreams had been sort of realized, and we had the biggest selling record in the world, and all the things you get into it for, the girls and the money and the fame and all that stuff. It was everything had come our way, and you had to reassess what you were in it for thereafter, and it was a pretty confusing and sort of empty time for a while.
Yeah.
Which, like, was somewhat understandable, but also kind of sad to learn.
Yeah.
Because Dark Side is what it is. It's fantastic. It's incredible. Never before have we even scratched the surface of some possibility of doing something like that.
Yep.
It works from start to finish. It's just really, really out of this world. I mean, Dark Side of them, and then they put this out, which I think is equally valuable, equally impressive, and a very dear record to me.
Oh yeah.
So I was pleased to see that it was on your list. How did you get into Floyd, and how did this one wind up making your list?
So, and like you touched on a little bit, I did have some albums that I cut. And of course, Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Now, that notion in and of itself, Dark Side of the Moon got cut from this list. You will never hear that. You never heard it before, and you'll never hear it again. So there is no list that should not be on. It's
on everybody's list.
It is,
but it's
you know what, when we talked the first time, and it was kind of the process of deciding what it was to me, I had gone through before and done like my favorite top 10 songs. And
wow,
did it for 96.5 The Buzz 15 years ago, and got picked to go on there. I sat in the studio with him.
Really?
Yeah, that was cool. What my favorite 10 songs of that time were, and they didn't have to be popular ones then. It was just songs that I really liked at that time. So I thought, well, I'll just revisit what I thought of that time, and maybe my music interests have changed a little bit, but those are pretty strong songs. But to do it with albums is different. And that, in and of itself, was a really cool journey. To think about that hard, because I thought, okay, I can't think of just the songs, because when I think about the 10 songs, and I probably couldn't tell you what those 10 songs were, but I could probably tell you what 5 were.
Right.
And I'm thinking that was the song off the album I liked. There wasn't really anything else on that album I liked. So to say that it's an album, then I have to really think about, oh yeah, Dark Side of the Moon. That was really what it was. I was like, well, that one's going on there. Boom, bam, it's on there. So now I'm thinking this is going to be harder than I thought. And maybe I don't have that many albums. And then I did. And I really got to thinking about it. It's like, oh yeah, there was that. And then I really delved into what it meant to me. And so when I really started listing them out, I thought hard about Dark Side of the Moon. And it is. What turns out with albums, what makes them important to me is that the album in and of itself is a story throughout the whole thing. and it tells the
Yeah.
story as you go through.
This
And
is way more of a Dark Side is kind of fragmented.
it
if
is
you
a little
think-
fragmented.
I mean, there's
It-
some unity.
Yeah,
but
but it does flow. I mean, obviously it flows
right.
together very well.
Especially if you turn on the Wizard of Oz or whatever. However. That
Yeah, I know.
works.
There's some sort of thing. I would love to do that
Right.
here, by the way.
that would be awesome.
Oh yeah, but I it kind of tells a story, but it is so iconic and so almost obvious that I didn't want it to be, and I thought I'll move on.
You're making me feel like I should have a bullet point caveat in the correspondence.
What are your-
we all have Dark Side on our list.
I know.
So
Doesn't it seem like it?
Don't let it take up a spot because
But-
we all have it.
But the thing is, I didn't really have an emotional connection to it other than I thought about it. It probably, there's a really good chance it was the very first album I listened to start to finish. So that in and of itself, you know, it was so popular and so timeless. Yeah. And the, you know, and the time. And so, but it's on so many lists. I didn't really have as much emotional bond as I had with this one, with Wish You Were Here. And I'll tell you, I vaguely remember one of the reasons I bought it the first time. And I remembered it sitting here when I flipped it over. So the backside of this album, the album cover, has a guy holding a clear album.
Huh.
Okay. So when I first started collecting records in the 80s,
Hold it.
so
there you
it's
go.
got the gentleman with the clear album
Yeah.
hanging there. And I was big into these half-speed master recordings. Of course, this predated CDs, so these were high-end master recordings. You know, they could have just been them selling me, and I fell for all the marketing.
Sure.
But I saw that, and I thought, I like Pink Floyd. You know, I've heard Dark Side of the Moon and this one, and I was collecting picture disc and colored vinyls at the time. What are the chances this is clear vinyl?
Right.
I think that's why I bought it.
Oh wow.
Opened it up and played it, and definitely played it all the way through.
Did you recognize Have a Cigar or Wish You Were Here? Or?
No.
Wow. Okay.
I think it was just there, and then when I'm listening to it, I'm like, I guess I felt like that's how you listen to a Pink Floyd album. You didn't go, oh, where's the good song on it? Oh, where's the other good song?
Right.
You just played it, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is all the way through good. And so I had an emotional connection to it that, and I've had this discussion with people before with certain songs. You know, what's a song if you hear it on the radio, you will not shut it off. You know, it's halfway over and you pull in your driveway. You're going to sit in the driveway. You're late for some place. You're going to listen to the rest of the song. Wish You Were Here. That track in and of itself is
that opening acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Dun, dun.
And I said, I haven't lived in a lot of different places. We rented a couple places, but I've always had fairly good stereo equipment.
Nice.
I just have. And music was always important to me. And when this, you know, came out, when that's why I was buying these master recordings, and I always had a good TAC, you know, not super high end turntable. I'd play this. This was the song I would play fairly loud that it would just engulf me. Wish You Were Here.
Turn it up so loud you can't even hear yourself singing along.
Yeah, and hopefully that's the way, because nobody wants to hear me sing. So, and as a side note, when I first bought my first CD player I bought, and I don't know if it's still true if you buy one now. I bought this on CD. I had to have it on CD. I had a CDP 101, which was the original one that they put out, the first production model, and Wish You Were Here. The first CD players were geared toward the CDs and everything were geared toward the audiophiles, the classical. So all of the, you know, you'd have a classical piece that had all these movements, so they'd have tracks and indices, so different index for different movements. The CD that I had for Wish You Were Here had 2 tracks and 5 indices.
Oh, because it all
Track
runs-
1 is side 1. Track 2 is side 2. Each index was a song.
Right.
I have no idea if it stayed that way, because of course then that went away.
Yeah.
A track was a song,
Yeah.
and it moved to that one. But I thought that was interesting, and I could move to whatever I wanted to hear, but I never wanted to hear it that way. I wanted to hear it as it progressed through, just like Dark Side of the Moon.
Right.
So, and I don't know why Wish You Were Here was, and like I said, I didn't know any of the background on it or any of the reasoning behind it. That's why it was so important to me. I just loved it because I loved it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that anyone else was listening to. I wasn't going, oh yeah, he's listening to that. I want to listen to it.
So what you get Shine On parts 1 through 4, and then it closes with 5 through 8.
Yeah.
And you have a Cigar, Wish You Were Here. What's the other track?
Here, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Wish You Were Here. What's the other one?
I don't know. You got it in front of you, though.
I do, but it's typical Pink Floyd.
Oh, it doesn't say.
It doesn't list it. And you know what? I had the CD, because I also have the CD. I wonder what it is. I could cheat and pull it out. Let's see what it is.
Oh, my copy doesn't say either.
Does it? Yeah, because I flipped it over earlier because I was like, what was it? I was doing the same thing. So, and I think, and it's not a gatefold. Okay, let's look. So we had Have a Cigar, Wish You Were Here, all the Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and I'm going to find it. And of course, it's white on the back.
Goodness.
Now you can see this. This was the thing that I did with music. These are so sealed. And the albums were always, I always took really good care of them. They were always in and out of it. It is. Why you touch it? Welcome to the Machine.
Oh, my gosh.
I can't believe I couldn't remember that.
Wow. It makes two of us.
It is.
Well, I don't know if I used to, sit down. I did for a long time sit down with liner notes and listen with headphones on and
Yeah.
and get real into it. I don't know if the first couple of times I listened to this thing, I realized that it was 1 through 4 and 5 through 8.
Yeah.
But
I didn't.
But by the time I did, I was like, that's really cool. And then I started to hone in a little bit more on the specific parts. There's just, like we were talking about Third Stage earlier, the cover art is like a picture of the Earth, and there's a rocket ship moving toward,
Yes.
and it's like part of their gear. It's like a
Yeah.
piece of equipment
Yeah.
with their logo on it. It feels,
But at first glance, you don't see
yeah,
it.
it
You
feels outer spacey. Well,
Yeah.
there's a very sort of outer spacey journey with, especially with some of the keyboard stuff Rick Wright's doing that makes it sound like a horn.
Yeah.
But the thing that I always go to in thinking back is there's a part. It kind of builds, and then you got some background, kind of cloud,
Yeah.
pillowy, and then all of a sudden there's this shooting star sort of sound where it's like, and it's like,
Where did that come from?
Yeah, what
Yep.
instrument?
Yeah.
What
But-
effect?
Yeah, and that is very typical of a Pink Floyd. That's kind of their moniker. It just kind of flows with
Yep.
it. And they have all that weird, like the start of, and I don't even know if it's the track before the end, before it goes into "Wish You Were Here."
With the
And you hear the people
conversation.
talking.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's really weird is to hear it in headphones, because I rarely used to play with headphones on.
Okay.
I wanted to feel everything.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be there. But you listen to it in headphones, and it's in so much stereo, and there's some of the stuff playing. Good example, I was listening to, of all things, when I was working out this morning, Magical Mystery Tour.
Oh, nice.
There's a story behind that. If we could get to it, we will. But so I'm listening to it. Very hard to listen to stereo Beatles with AirPods in,
Oh.
because is that one cut out? Did that one cut out? I literally
working?
did that. Is it doing? Oh, that's part of the song.
Right. Yeah.
But there's parts you don't normally hear because they're doing it on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
But Welcome to the Machine, and I'm a little distraught that I didn't remember which it was, because I love that track, because
It's
hey,
guttural.
good luck. Very guttural.
It's like
hey,
steamboat.
Hey, kid. Yeah, it's the workforce. It's just this is life. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
It's gonna suck.
Remember how you just spent your whole life wishing you were growing up?
Yeah.
Now you are.
Now you are, and it's
Have fun.
welcome to the machine. It's dark and
Yeah.
it's gritty, and it is one of them that I would crank up and just absorb myself into it to do it. So it was, that was very much a part of that one.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool record. And quite the transition piece to go
Yeah.
from, just such a. I always assume everybody knows an album like that because if
Yeah.
you don't, you should. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like.
But I would get it if I would get it if they don't, because Dark Side of the Moon was so popular.
I mean,
it was
so is The
big,
Wall.
and how in most places. Yeah, that's true.
But in between Dark Side and The Wall are perhaps the two greatest records they ever wrote.
What was the other one?
Animals?
Animal. Okay.
Animals is
Yep.
just. I mean,
Yeah.
rocking. That'll bring
Yeah.
you out of your office being like, is the
Well, is
everything
the
all
walls
right?
going to fall down? Yeah. Yeah.
But so we go from a really well-known album, at least in my mind, from '75 to '82, The Nightfly.
Yeah.
Donald Fagen.
Yep.
First of 4, 8 tracks, 38 minutes long, 7 Grammy nominations this got.
That doesn't surprise me.
One of let's see, the Wall Street Journal of all places called it one of pop music's sneakiest masterpieces. 31 studio musicians credited. How'd this one land in your lap?
Okay, so this is really weird. I had no idea he was in Steely Dan when I bought this album.
Okay, wow.
How weird is that?
Did you immediately know when you put it on?
No.
Okay.
Because
Maybe you
Steely Dan was not on my radar. It was a 70s band. I was an 80s kid, Even though I was listening to Pink Floyd, Pink Floyd is timeless to me.
Yeah.
But with this one, I heard on the radio, New Frontier.
Okay.
What a crazy song to be popular in the 80s.
Yeah.
This is 50s and 60s jazz, and didn't even feel like 50s, 60s jazz, but it had that weird synthesized and goes along just smooth. And the cover, it's got him, smoking a cigarette in an old time.
Smoking a Chesterfield.
Is that? Oh yeah,
Which
he mentions in there. Yeah,
he does.
Yeah,
And
a couple of times.
I go to
Chesterfield Kings. Yeah,
Well, True Romance. Have you ever seen that? Oh man.
I know it. I know the movie, but I don't think I've ever
Christopher
seen it.
Walken, Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an incredible movie.
Yeah.
And there's an iconic scene where Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper are having words, and they both pretty much know how this is going to go down. And to start the scene off, Christopher Walken says, "Can I interest you in a Chesterfield?" And Dennis Hopper declines.
Yeah.
And then a few bars later into the conversation, and now it's real clear how this is going to end. And he mind if I get one of those Chesterfields now?
Well, and they were iconic for a time.
Yeah,
So now,
absolutely.
what was it? It was what was the movie?
True Romance.
True Romance. Okay.
Brad Pitt is in it. It's a Tarantino.
Oh, is it really?
Balky, Bronson Pinchot from
Bronson Pinchot,
Perfect Strangers.
Yep.
I mean, like Sean, Chris Penn. Like every time the scene changes, you're
There's
like,
somebody.
Geez, this
Yeah.
guy too.
Yeah. Okay. So
it is.
I'm surprised I haven't.
It's so good.
Yeah. So
Brad Pitt is a stoner.
Oh yeah. It kind of fits. That's good. So I didn't know that it was. I'd obviously heard Steely Dan, but it wasn't on my radar. I had this, but I'd heard New Frontier, and I bought this. So what I'm trying to remember is, and I'm pretty sure I had this album before I had the CD.
Okay.
What was the year? What'd you say the year was it came out? 82?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would have had the album before. I heard that song, loved it. And of the songs on there, it all has that jazzy feel, which was so out of the ordinary. It was fairly popular. I mean, obviously it wasn't top of the charts type popular, but
Right.
it was obviously Grammy award winning type popular, but odd to be on pop radio, the radio at the time. Yeah, especially with the feel of
Well,
it.
that's what, I think the track listing in the streaming service had an asterisk by that one and by one, and I'm like, there were 2 tracks on this that were like maybe popular enough to
probably
be getting radio play.
New Frontier was definitely on there. IGY, maybe
that's
International
the
Geophysical
lead,
Year.
yep.
I had to look that up, figure out what it was, because a lot of times when it was the music, to me, it wasn't about the meaning or the background or anything like that. I just liked the music.
Yeah.
I still do that to this day. I kind of don't necessarily want to know the whole feeling behind it. But this is another one of those that I would listen to all the way through. They're all good.
Fantastic.
Walk Between the Raindrops, it was kind of a doo-wop kind of thing going on. Goodbye Look, same thing. Ruby Baby, Maxine. But New Frontier was the key. It was the one that
reeled you in.
that reeled me in.
Yeah.
And I had it. So when I was in high school, I bought my first CD player, and that I kind of wish I had it, but I hawked it in college so I could go to spring break.
Yeah.
So I traded it for experience, even though I'd really like to have my CDP 101 back.
Right.
But I bought the CD player. I got it from Audio Electronics at 95th and Knoll.
Yeah.
One of the only places that had CD players at the time and CDs, almost all classical music, but they had the Eurythmics.
Oh, wow.
Sweet Dreams.
Yeah.
And they had the Nightfly.
Okay.
And those were the first 2 CDs I bought. I bought them when I bought the CD player.
Nice.
And over the course of the next year, I would play that for people. Had no idea what a CD was. I had saved my money for another audio component, and loved the look of the reel-to-reel, which were kind of popular for nostalgic reasons, and thought that. And when the CD player came out, I got to have one.
Yeah.
So when I would play a CD, people go, I don't know what's a CD. What is that thing? And I'd put it in. I used this one as a reference because New Frontier in and of itself is so clear. And close to the end of it, they actually have a cowbell hit as it's going through, and that's all it is. It's just got this little kind of hazy that, and they're just barely playing it in the background, and they're hitting that cowbell. And I'd play a CD, and people like, "Oh, what is it?" And I say, "Okay, this is as clear as it gets. There is no friction on this. This is all digital audio, and it is the cleanest sound you've ever heard. And I will play you this song so you can understand." And I'd have 4 speakers set up in my dorm room with this thing turned up, and would get to that part, and I'd say, just close your eyes.
Sure.
And realize it feels like there's somebody standing right behind you hitting a cowbell.
I think I came across maybe multiple mentions of this being like the first album that was recorded. I mean, something in the neighborhood of what you're talking about,
like it was an early rock
all
when it was
digital,
all digital.
Like
maybe then.
Yeah, which sort of tracks to me, and
yeah.
To me, Steely Dan have always been like in my mind,
cutting edge,
smart guys that can groove.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, or maybe they're guys that can groove that are
and they just happen to be smart. Yeah. But and maybe a little bit ahead. Like, hey, we're gonna try some new stuff. Now think about that. You're trying to have this gritty, old, jazzy kind of thing, but you want it as clean as can be, which is now a little contradictory. Now everybody's going back to vinyl because of the imperfections in it. That cool kind of interesting, the tube amplifiers and the popping and all that stuff. And it's kind of nostalgic. It's kind of cool. But I will take this LP on a CD any day for that song at that time.
Nice.
It's just so cool to hear it. And they just... and it finishes the song that way. There's just this little organ in the back.
It's good
and
stuff.
It just sort of fades off.
Yeah.
And I loved it for that. And people would understand. They could understand what I saw in it. And they're like, oh, my Lord. It sounds like somebody's standing next to me, just just tapping that cowbell all, and you got to make the cowbell reference.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
You already mentioned Christopher
Walken.
Walken, so-
Yeah,
so
I got a fever.
Oh, yeah. Got a fever.
Well, for some reason, Wish You Were Here from 75 into The Night Flight in 82 made sense to me. And Where We Go Next threw me for a little bit of a loop, which is a 4-year leap ahead to 1986, Licensed to Ill, Beastie Boys.
Beastie Boys, yeah.
First debut record of 8 total they put out, 13 songs, 44 minutes. Let's talk Beasties.
Oh, so, I talked about how I had my 10 favorite songs.
Yeah.
It was hard to pick the one off of this one. This is another one that I could listen all the way through, even though I didn't necessarily like every track. Night Fly, loved every track. Wish You Were Here, love every track.
Yeah.
I'll still listen to some of them, but the weird thing was it was the popular ones that were my least favorite.
No, the ones that never got the love are have the coolest beats or the coolest hooks.
They really did. And there again, it's another one of those that kind of flows through. They seemed at the time almost like it was satirical, like they were almost laughing at themselves. But I'm trying to remember the song that I had. Oh, I know what it was. The song I had on my list was Paul Revere.
Oh man,
Paul Revere is a story in and of itself. I mean, it just is.
how does that?
Yeah, where they play that and it almost sounds like they're backtracking or
Yeah.
they're scratching or something like that. And it's a cool storyline. Yeah, and other instruments in that. So, so the whole thing, I loved it all. But Fight for Your Right to Party was the first one, and then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and
Yeah.
I get that. And of course, music videos were big, so that was a good video. No Sleep Till Brooklyn was good. She's and then but it was the other tracks, these crazy tracks where they were just
Crafty.
she's crafty. Hold It Now.
Rhyming and stealing.
Yeah, rhyming and stealing, and they did. They kind of flowed from one to the other. Sometimes they do it enough. It was hard to tell
When one song
that
ended
little
and
piece if it was the start of the next
Right.
one or if
That's-
it was.
It's like that same with the conversation and Wish You Were Here.
Yeah, it does that. So, but the Paul Revere one was on my, and it probably still is, just because it's just a fun story.
Yeah.
It sounds satirical, old kind of. You can picture the old Wild West as
Yeah.
they're talking about it.
Is that the one that has? I ran into MCA. I said howdy. He
He said hi. Yeah.
It's like what?
Yeah,
Are we
yeah.
in
It was like
this-
they're just throwing things
Yeah.
out. Like, okay, we got to make sure.
There's
Yeah,
a
it's just-
saloon.
Yeah.
We're either
Yeah,
in
and they
one
always
or-
do like you had to do in the 80s when you're rapping, and they still kind of do it now. You have to say your names over and over.
Yeah.
Mike D, MCA.
Yep.
Yeah. And they'll say their real names, Adam Yauch, and they're just all through there. They're just saying it. But I remember watching, and this is horrible, like in the 90s or something, there was like some cheerleader competition on ESPN. And it's just this national cheerleader competition, and they have all this music. I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. And they're playing all this wild music. And one of the groups used a sample, and they'd always use little pieces of different songs, and they were always upbeat and do all this. And they used a part from Paul Revere.
Really?
Yes. So they're, cheerleaders, they're up and they're down and they're flying and they're doing all this, and they have all these props and they're throwing things out, and they all come out, and a bunch of them have wiffle ball bats. And
Oh,
they're
man.
like, oh no, and they're swinging the bat. And they use the line from that
Did it like this?
song.
Did it like that?
Did it? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, you missed the point of that. And I thought, in a really bad way.
Yeah,
And I thought
yeah.
it was the funniest
You
thing.
should
And I'm
go
like,
have a quart of beer and re-listen to
yeah,
that song.
yeah. Just really need to figure out. Somebody was choreographing. They said wiffle ball bat. We could use wiffle ball
be-
bats. Maybe you should hear
Yeah.
the same song.
Easy prop.
Woo!
That's
Yeah,
funny.
that was rough. I saw that and just laughed, and I always remember that. I just thought that was kind of funny. But I loved this this CD, and I bought it on cassette first.
Yep. Same.
Had it later on CD just because, and I always thought it was funny. The if the CD, which the CD has this on the front and has the crashing part of it
Right.
on the back.
Yeah.
Whereas the cassette has the whole thing.
Right.
Because you could see it, but it has the call letters on it. You know that one?
The call letters.
Call letters on the.
I don't know that I do. What?
Yeah, the call letters on the back of the plane.
Oh, what?
Call letters are 3MTA3.
3M
MTA3. And if you put it in a mirror, it says "Eat Me."
Ah, nice.
And I thought 3M. Oh, I know what that says. Yep, it says "Eat Me" backwards.
Nice.
In it, or in a mirror is what
Right.
it is. So
That's
I
like
just-
8,000 or 80,058 on a calculator.
yeah,
Boobs.
boobs. Yeah,
Or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, yeah. You add it up and say, yeah, it's boobs. Yeah, but that was when I did my 10 favorite songs. I was in the studio, 96.5, and they're asking me about them, and they're just songs. They're doing this and everything, and I was thinking this, and I said I got into rap stuff, and I was into this one. And the DJ asked me, he said, so did you get into like break dancing and all of that stuff? And I go, no, I wasn't a break dancer. This was kind of the rap stuff. And I did. The funniest part of that was when they played it on the air, they played my interview. He edited his question out.
Gosh, you told me this, I think. on
So
the phone.
he edited his question out. It sounds like I'm defensive. Like I'm like, oh, but I didn't break dance or anything because nobody prompted me with a question that you could
Wow.
hear. And I thought it was hilarious.
That is
and I think some people would have taken offense to that, but that was hilarious to me. That was like, I'm listening to that going, oh my God. Now it just sounds like I was breakdancing all over, but I
Sounds like
denied
a
it.
thing that you say everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Hey, you met Jeff? Hey, I'm not a break.
I'm not a breakdancer. I'm just telling you right now.
Right. That's funny.
It was very clever. It
It
was
is.
done very well. He's like, he's editing and go, watch this. I'm going to make it sound like he's a breakdancer. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, we go from licensed to ill in '86 up to 1994 to a fascinating record that has come up quite a bit in my life just since starting the podcast, and that's MTV Unplugged in New York, live acoustic in parentheses, Nirvana.
Yeah.
And the way that it comes up is typically if I'm having a conversation with somebody about the Nirvana studio discography, you've only got Nevermind, Bleach, and Utero.
Utero.
Right? I think those are the three. Incesticide was something that was put together.
Yeah, it was put together afterwards. But yeah, you're right. I think that's correct. I think there's really only three.
But a lot of
I had a lot of
times,
them, but,
lot of times, people will say those are all fantastic for their own reasons, but the best Nirvana ever was Unplugged.
Yeah.
And I've heard that half a dozen times, 10 times over the last year and a half, but never have I been moved to wanting to put it on and revisit
Really?
it. So when I did for this, it occurred to me that I've really only heard snippets of it
That's right.
since it came out. Now, when
Yeah.
it came out, I heard it a bunch.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because
I-
they were playing that. And, Yeah.
And it is really, really, really remarkable. It
Yeah.
is really good. A lot of interesting things. Somebody that was on the crew to set the stage up the way that it was. Like had we known.
Yeah.
Because it was, I think, 5 months.
Yeah.
After
It was very close afterwards.
they were like, that stage should still be set up that way and be like a
yeah,
a
like
stop in
almost like
museum.
like a museum.
But
yeah.
we didn't know.
Right.
The cardigan sweater
Yeah.
that he's wearing just sold for $334,000 and hasn't been washed
Yeah.
since. I mean, it's just every single track is remarkable.
Yeah.
And he seems loose, like he's having
does.
fun.
Yeah. But it was hard to tell at that time.
It was.
Because it's the mental illness thing. It's that you put on a happy face, but you're struggling because what you're doing is making you popular. Popularity makes you struggle. It's the catch-22 of fame.
Well, it's all of the a couple of the podcasts that I paid close attention to, this it comes up a lot, and just this feeling that whatever the level is, whatever the number is, whatever the metric is, that insert your own amount of fame and wealth, and it's gonna solve everything, and it's gonna cleanse all this stuff. And
Yeah.
by and large, they all say
No.
it doesn't.
That's right.
It's like, okay, now I'm at this level of fame where like I got to think about where I'm going,
Yeah.
because I don't want to like always be running it, or I have so much money that I could buy and build 46 Aztec
Yeah.
Shawnee
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
tomorrow
That's right.
if I wanted to.
Right.
But the stuff in there, none of it's healed.
Yeah. None of it goes away.
fulfilled.
Right.
I'm curious. I mean, I know Nevermind like the back of my hand. I know In Utero pretty well. Bleach and Incesticide are a little too harsh and aggressive for me, which
Yeah.
is not. That's just my. It's not to say that they're
Yeah, but
lesser.
it was very different.
So like, what is your relationship with those 3 or 4 records, and then this one? Like, are they? I mean, it's
very much together.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still-
So they were all a piece of it. It was just that was there. It was again with albums. So I love all the albums. Nevermind obviously brings it in.
Yeah.
I read a deal not too long ago that in June the year before, they played a festival or something like that. Kind of like I kind of equate it with like a place like Boulevardia. If you've ever been to that, where you have your 2 or 3 headliners, but it really you've got 5 stages and you have all these lower bands. There used to be one called the Horde Fest here.
Horizons of rock developing everywhere.
Yeah.
That's
So-
where Fish.
Is that what
Blues
is that what
Traveler-
Horde means? I have no idea. I have a CD of those too, and
Fish, Blues Traveler, Widespread Panic, Big Head Todd.
Really?
It's the jam band. It's the
Yeah.
birth of the jam band scene.
Okay.
I mean, beyond the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, and I went to one here and heard a great band that obviously got signed but never got really popular, a band called Emmett Swimming. I heard them out there and I love it. I have a couple of CDs from them. Just really cool, but never really hit the mainstream. But those, I guess Nirvana played at one in June of one year, and like 2 or 3 weeks later, Nevermind, Smells Like Teen Spirit hit and just went skyrocket.
Yeah.
So they played the same festival the next year as the headliner.
Wow.
They went from, in 1 year's time. Obviously it happened quicker than that, but that's a cool kind of story of being one of those. That's
cool. It's also a lot.
Yeah,
Probably.
especially
for
in a
them,
short period of time.
For them to be like,
Yeah,
You
to
gotta-
absorb that.
yeah.
I just
Yeah.
can't imagine, especially when, like you said, if they were in that frame of mind of this is what we want. We want to have that hit, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I always felt like Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic always wanted that, and I don't know them. I've only what I've read. You don't know if any of it's
Right.
true, but they were probably one of those, and maybe deep down, Kurt was like, I just love playing music.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that hits and everything goes crazy. So you just have to fall into it.
yeah.
And which was, his inevitable demise. It was just overpowering. And maybe it was him saying, yeah, maybe this will fix everything, but it just doesn't.
Wow.
But just really powerful. But that one, it's more so than just the CD itself.
Oh, you do have it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Strangely, I know where most of mine are.
Right.
But I also tells you how long I've had some of this stuff. I have a laser disc of this as well.
Nice.
I have an old Pioneer laser disc that I played on, and it plays the whole, and so you see the visuals, and there's a lot of really interesting things on it. The very first, and it's the banter between that really makes it for me. It's everything even over and above the songs. Because if you hear the song on the radio or if you play it on Spotify or on Amazon, you don't get the banter.
No, and there's a healthy amount of genuine laughter.
It is.
Right?
Yeah, there is. It's the conversations between and why they're doing it and what's going on. Everything's there. Some of the other musicians, and to see it visually, I see that again, and I go back to it and I look at it and watch the video of it. If you watch it in its entirety, and you look at all those people in the audience had no idea what was going to happen within a few months, and they're just absorbed in how orchestral, because they throw in some cellos and a little bit of an orchestra in some of them, but there's a very poignant statement that Kurt makes at the very beginning of it before he plays About a Girl.
What does he say?
He says, because I think that's the one off Bleach.
Okay.
And Bleach was their very first album. And he says, this is off our first album. Most people don't own it. And he plays it. And it's like, everybody's like, oh, cool. Oh, yeah, I reckon. And you have this weird smattering of applause because it takes a minute for them to recognize it.
Oh, yeah.
Because they start playing, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And that, but that one is very slow to pull. And he's right. At that point in time, everybody was listening to Nevermind, and that's it. That's all it was. But it's that cool, Kurt Cobain. This is off our first album. Most people don't own it. And if you've ever heard the line about that song, About a Girl, where that came from, Dave Grohl tells the story and says they were someplace sitting. He walked into a room and Kurt's playing the song. He's playing and going through this thing. And Dave says, "What's that song?" He goes, "It's about a girl." That's where the title comes from.
I love it.
Which means I'll bet there weren't lyrics yet.
Right.
And then they came.
Yeah.
And it's just that progression of how an artist comes up with lyrics, usually well after they've come up with the hooks and the licks and the chord progressions and all that, which is just on an intellectual level I just can't comprehend.
Yeah.
A creative and intellectual level that I just can't.
Well, I don't think it's meant to be comprehended because it happens differently for everybody.
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
Every artist,
but that's why everything's so different. But to listen to this all the way through on the video, when you watch it, some of the highlights, On a Plane is good. Of course, Where Did You Sleep Last Night, which is a cover of an old, which I didn't even know who that was. Lead Belly. I had to look back at that one. I didn't know who that was. But when he's just screaming the lyrics is just so moving and heart-wrenching. But the David Bowie's Man Who Sold the World, not heard the song until after I heard this one.
Right.
And I went back and had to hear that one. And there's another one of those songs that are good for different reasons for different people. But my favorite one on here, and I had to look, and I know what it was. It's Penny Royalty.
Oh.
I have no idea what that's about. No idea. It's got to be a drug reference. I think some of it is. I don't know. But my favorite part of it is when you watch the video or you listen for the whole thing with all the banter, he says, am I going to play this by myself? And you can tell they weren't going to do it that way. And so he basically says, I'm going to play it by myself, and I'm going to play it in, I think he says E.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it in E, which is higher than every other version of it. And if it doesn't work, I'll just start over, and these people are going to have to wait.
Yeah.
It is so cool. It's just like, it is the reality. And he laughs. He's like, I was just going to have to wait.
Yeah.
And he starts playing it, and it's almost too high, and he struggles to hit because now he gets, and he's stretching to get to it, and he plays it all the way through. For somebody to do that, and I reference my son being able to just instantly transpose on that, I look at this and I go, I'm going to play it in E. Let's see if it works.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then these people are just going to have to wait, and I'm going to start over.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So, and I love that, and I always loved that about him. That was just kind of that way. And but they're all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great track listing.
That was it. And all of their stuff was good. And I have some odd bootleg stuff from
sure.
odd concerts they have on CD, some weird stuff. Polly on this one, which is a dark, kind of minor key version of it. And if you've ever heard some early stuff when they were playing in clubs, and I have some bootleg stuff that is, stuff that is probably totally illegal, burned CDs that are, and it was, there's a punk rock Polly.
Oh.
And it is fast, and it's, I heard it and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. It's like, he is just grungy as can be, just punk rocking it out, just, and it's fast, and it is really pretty cool. So
nice. Well, the fifth and final spot is probably no surprise to you, a first-time appearance here on the pod. America, a tribute to heroes, various artists, 2001, 21 tracks, 91 minutes, huge lists of artists and speakers. Just a few highlights from the artist list: Bruce Springsteen, Stevie Wonder, U2, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Neil Young, doing Imagine beautifully on the piano. Alicia Keys, Billy Joel, Dave Matthews, Sheryl Crow, Willie Nelson, many more. The timeline of this blew me away, and I hope I have this right, but it looks like it was recorded just a week or two after 9/11, and then once it was recorded, they turned around and got it out another week or two later.
Right.
Like all of it, I think, happened within September.
It was really close.
I all but forgotten that this was made. Tell me about it.
Okay. So when they came out with it, 9/11, especially for even our lifetime, that was a major, that's as big as it gets. That's in other generations, that's a
Pearl Harbor.
That's a Pearl Harbor. That's
Gettysburg, I don't know.
That's true. It just is. There was so much revolved around that, and there again, you have these people with this incredible talent that just want to bring to the forefront, and they had this huge telethon, and that was part of the telethon were these songs that people brought out, and they were odd versions that they hadn't done. They may have been, there's at least one song that had not been released.
Oh, wow.
And then was released later that they were probably working on. Tom Petty played Won't Back Down. I think that's the track that he played on there. And if you watch him sing that, it
doesn't sound like the Full Moon Fever version.
It is not. He is pissed, and he is glaring into the camera. This is not, because at that time we have no answers. We just have speculation of why, 9/11 happened. And
he's not pissed that he's there doing that song.
No, he is pissed at why that happened. He has this look. He has his head tipped, and he's looking directly into the camera of just this total, he's just pissed.
Yeah.
And a lot of, the other ones were, Stevie Wonder starts his with a beautiful line about being a Muslim, going, a thing about, because he wants people to understand this isn't about that religion. This is an extremist group. This is something that happens. It is not about being a Muslim. So he makes that one, and it has this, of course, Stevie Wonder. So he has this beautiful rendition of a song he's done before. Bruce Springsteen.
Billy Joel's, he does New York State of Mind.
New York State of Mind. First time I'd really ever heard that. But see, it's,
really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I was never a big Billy Joel fan.
Oh, okay.
But you hear that, there again, go back and listen to the other one. But that version of it, basically saying, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
But Neil Young's Imagine.
Alicia Keys.
And they were all beautiful renditions. But this was one of the last ones I thought of for albums, and I realized how much of an emotional impact this album has. I have trouble talking about it.
Oh, wow.
I love listening to it. You can imagine what my favorite track is, and it's by somebody that I don't really like.
Oh,
It's "Wish You Were Here,"
there's a cover of "Wish You Were Here" on there.
Yep.
Oh, I did see that.
and it's Fred Durst. But he's accompanying.
I'm with you now.
He's accompanying, and I'm trying to remember his name. It's the lead singer of the Goo Goo Dolls,
Oh, yeah.
and they do "Wish You Were Here," and they change the lyrics a little bit to fit. And they were, in between, if you watch the video, in between there's celebrities talking about what's going on.
Yeah.
So as it goes through, but the CD it just does it. So it's on here. John Resnick of the
Okay.
Goo Goo Dolls with members of Limp Bizkit, which is Fred Durst and I'm trying to remember the other guy who was the guitar player. But it's just a beautiful version of that song, and we're going back to
Right.
how powerful that song was. Dave Matthews "Every Day," which is a good song anyway.
It is. It's also a really good video.
Yeah.
Have you seen the video?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, where he's standing up there and it's just totally acoustic guitar.
But I mean the studio version.
No, I don't know that
Oh, dude. Okay.
Okay.
So do you know who Judah Friedlander is?
I do.
He's
Why
a
do?
goofy-looking, maybe New Yorker. He's
Yeah.
a stand-up comic.
Yes, I know now.
Trucker hat.
And
big,
the
thick glasses
Yes.
and long hair.
Yes. Yeah.
The video starts. He's in bed. His
Yeah.
alarm goes off, and he just sits up. He puts on his hat and shoes, and his whole day is
You're just following.
approaching strangers and asking if he can give them a hug. And he
Oh,
gets
really?
every single kind of response you could imagine.
Oh, yeah.
People that are moved to tears, people that want to fight him.
Yeah.
And then as the day ends, the song is ending, and he's taking off his hat and getting back in bed, and
Yeah.
like that's what he does.
Which is obviously what I'm going to do when we leave here, because I'm going to check that out.
oh, dude, it's so
But
good.
that's funny.
It's awesome.
But the song itself in this version, even the video, it's just Dave Matthews acoustic guitar just belting it out.
yeah,
which
pouring
is
out his soul.
So with as a side note, and I love telling people this story. I listened to Dave Matthews perform live from my deck in front of my house. So Dave Matthews is one of those philanthropic kind of guys, likes to raise money for charities, do all this stuff. When he came to town years ago, I can almost pinpoint the date, would have been, I think it would have been late 90s.
Okay.
And I live in Western Shawnee. We live across the street from a park, but we live where I can look out over Mid-America softball fields.
Oh,
He did a celebrity softball tournament to raise money for
Cool.
a cause, and then they did a little concert. And I happened to be working on my deck that summer. I could sit on my deck and listen to Dave Matthews
Nice.
play live.
nice.
Crazy hot day. They only played 2 songs. Like somebody passed out in the audience, and he's like, "Nope, we're done. It's just too hot.
Yeah.
Can't do it."
Yeah.
But I did. I got to listen to Dave Matthews
That's
live.
cool.
There's not many people that can say that, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. I literally could stand there and watch them, and I'm like a good quarter mile away, but they were playing to where it was like, oh, I'm just sitting here working on my deck.
Right.
I'm listening to Dave
Right.
Matthews. But I was trying to remember some of the other ones. Safe and Sound by Sheryl Crow was a really good one. Oh, yeah. Fragile by Sting. So I'm a big Police fan, big Sting. And yet, none of them really made the cut because there's songs off of ones that I like. And I think I did. I cut one.
You cut
It was-
Every Breath You Take, the singles.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, Every Breath You Take, this
which is a greatest hits.
that one. It's kind of a greatest hits. And then I was reading up on it, why they did it, which was one of the few times I actually read up on it because I thought that was really weird. But it was a remake of, they had a couple of, Don't Stand So Close to Me. They redid that one, which
Okay.
sounded very similar, but it was from
Right.
the original one. But it was right at the time where they were not getting along.
Oh.
They needed to put out an LP.
Synchronicity. They recorded
Yeah.
privately.
Yeah.
And they were never in
and
the
they
room
never
together.
in the room together. Yep. Yeah. Also, another good album.
Right,
Actually,
very good.
I have that album signed by Sting.
Nice.
I bought it. I've never met Sting.
Right.
One of the most interesting people
Sure.
in the world, I think. Very intelligent, just incredible. I heard a quote by, and I can never remember if it was Branford Marsalis or Wynton Marsalis. And he said, it was one of the two of them. And somebody asked him, because he was recording with Sting. And they go, "What's it like recording with Sting?" And he goes, here's recording with Sting in a nutshell. We're on a plane flying wherever, I think from Europe to the US or something like that, and they're going to do a recording. And on the plane ride, Sting looks at me and says, "Hey, you know what would be fun? We should do this song in 11/4 time. Let's try to do that."
I don't even know.
And the
I can't imagine
okay.
sonically
Yeah.
what that time signature was.
So if I told you what I'm pretty sure the song they were talking about, because I can't remember if it's Wynton or Branford that plays the saxophone, I'm pretty sure I know what song he's talking about because it would have come on after that. It was probably when they were arranging this and trying to do it. And he's like, "Why would you want to do that? It's Englishman in New York." They never said it, but there's a really strong sax solo on it, and it's this long, especially when the song starts, it's this long drawn out, the saxophone thing. But right in the middle of it, it goes haywire,
Oh, really?
and you cannot keep time.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like then it goes back to 4/4 time. It was like, what the hell just happened? It's got to be that song. And it was like, I just thought that was funny. But I've always been a big fan of Sting. Most everybody I know, all my good friends, the people that I know, I have a song associated with them. It'll change periodically.
Sure.
But there's just certain songs. My wife asked me, she goes, "Did my song make it?"
To your top 10?
To my top for my
KKFI?
well, it made it for it made it in my top 10, but it didn't make it for this.
Oh, okay.
Because it's one of the few songs on an album that but it is on that singles one. I
So
think
what
it
is
was
it?
Every Little Breath She Takes.
Okay.
So and it does. Every little thing she does is magic. That's it. So
Oh, right.
and it is on this one, but it's a remake. But
Right.
this one has so many good songs.
Oh, yeah.
But that's hers. But I just have, there's just, people have a song, and it's a song
Sure.
that I listen to. I'll listen to it in its entirety, and when I hear that song, I think of them.
Nice.
So, it's just one of those things. But and I've seen Sting in concert,
Nice.
and we went and saw them, him and Tracy Chapman out at
Oh, cool.
Sandstone, which was really cool.
That'd be a little while ago.
Yeah, that was a brand new day tour.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Well, we
yeah.
talked. So we've covered your 5 that made the list, and,
Mm-hmm.
and of your 4 that didn't. Dark Side was one.
Right.
The Police, Every Breath You Take, the singles. Sgt. Pepper's
Yeah,
made the list until it didn't.
until it didn't. So, Sgt. Pepper's, until after we talked, I had never listened to it all the way through.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it made it was an impact kind of album for me because, and I mentioned earlier, when I started collecting albums and records, I was collecting particularly colored vinyl, die cuts, and picture discs.
Wow.
So that was just a thing that I got into. They were rare. They were different. They were something fun to do. And I have almost all my collection to this day. Most of them were bought at Village Records here in Shawnee.
Sure. Tying it back to that community.
Yeah. It was just one of those things. I knew Bill and Tony that ran it. I think I told you the story. Robert that used to work there. He comes to the theater still.
Nice.
Does this. He's an incredible photographer, by the way. Not his main line of work. He just takes amazing pictures.
Cool.
And I met him one day, and when I saw him, I'm like, I knew his name was Robert. And then my brother said something. I goes, yeah, remember he was at Village Records for years. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Robert, same guy. So anyway, but my colored vinyls, picture discs, all that, Beatles loved to put out picture disc and colored vinyls. I have a white album.
Nice.
I have the blue. I have the greatest hits. The blue. I have the red. I've got. I have an early one called the Silver Beatles. Has Pete Best on it, and it's a picture disc.
Weird.
Remember Pete Best?
Nope.
Their original drummer.
Oh.
Who at one time lived here in Kansas City.
Oh,
I've been to
wow.
his house, as a matter of fact, just offhandedly. Somebody said that's Pete Best's house. I'm like, he's the original drummer for the Beatles. Pete Best had one of the craziest lines. Somebody said, "Oh, how do you feel?" You know, and right after you left, they got really popular. And I believe he was the one that said, "Maybe it's because I left." You know, like maybe they wouldn't have been as popular. Like he got it. It was like, "Oh, I missed out on that."
Right.
Yeah, maybe you know, but
I did him a favor.
maybe I did him a favor. But he, you know, he'd probably point out too. He's like, "I did fine." But super nice guy. But Sgt. Pepper's was one of the odd ones that they had all these different versions of a picture disc. So I would find them every once in a while. I'd go to record shows and do this. So my brother and I go to a record show one time, and I'm looking for picture discs. I'm looking for odd vinyls, die cuts, whatever. And I come across a Sgt. Pepper's one. And I pull it out, and I look at it, and I'm thinking, I don't think I have this one. And on it is a sticker, and they made them in different countries, and they did all this. But this one was made, and it was stickered from West Germany. And I'm like, and it had different pictures on it than the ones before that I'd had. And I go, I don't think I have this one. And at the time, I wasn't thinking of it being in West Germany, because now it would just be listed as Germany.
Right.
But that's, at the time,
No kidding.
that's what it was. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. So
Before
I'm
the
like,
wall came down.
yeah,
right?
and so I'm trying to decide. I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure I don't have this. I'm going to buy this album. So I buy it, and I'm walking around this show and picking up some other album stuff. So I'm walking up, and I see my brother, and I'm going to go up, and he's talking to somebody. And as I walk up, I see the guy talking to my brother who was standing right behind me when I bought the Sgt. Pepper's album. And he's telling my brother this story about this kid that bought this record right in front of him. Bruce Young. He's our partner in the theater.
Oh, my gosh.
First time I met
That's so
Bruce.
wild.
First time I met Bruce.
Wow.
And because Bruce is going, yeah. He goes, he had this great Sgt. Pepper's. He buys it right in front of me. There he is. And Chris goes, that's my brother. I'm like, okay.
You can't make that
And
stuff up.
I know, it's just weird. And I'm like, and when I say something to people, I go, Bruce, you remember when we met? He goes, yeah, I remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of the things I gravitated to, because I had a lot of versions of it.
Sure.
But like I said, and you can probably see in that album, I rarely played them. I'd play them, and my picture discs are all sealed. I kept them because I enjoyed collecting them. But I hadn't played it all the way through. And I had a gentleman from a band called the True Tones here locally, that their forte is they follow two specific albums, and it is the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Okay.
And they play them in their entirety. First half of their show is one, second half of their show is the other.
Wow.
And I told him my story about Sgt. Pepper, said that's interesting, but that I'd never really listened to it all the way through. And so I finally got around to the time, and I did it when I was at the gym. I popped my headphones in instead of just popping on my playlist or whatever alternative playlist I normally do. I'm going to listen to these albums. And one day I listened all the way through Pet Sounds, and one day I listened all the way through Sgt. Pepper's, and I realized how good Sgt. Pepper's was. It's just a really good, there it is again, it's a full story all the way through. Really kind of interesting. But I've had those albums forever. I even have a weird version that is the Bee Gees from the movie, because they were the ones in the movie, and they performed some of them during the movie. It's strange.
Wow.
Because they were the part in the movie that were playing some or whatever, and it's some DJ promotional album, totally blank on the cover, just has a sticker says promotional copy, and it almost looks handwritten, like a stamp of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It was just one of my collections. That's why it was on there, because I had some good story about it, and it's really kind of a neat. As a matter of fact, I just talked to Russ yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Because I talked to him, I said, I finally listened to it all the way through. and Pet Sounds too. And so we had this really good conversation about the songs on it and the Beatles and all this, how interesting it is to go back now and listen all the way through and listen to some of those. But he said, and there, I told you earlier, this morning I listened to Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah.
It's because when I was talking to Russ yesterday, he said, well, we added one. Now we're playing the Magical Mystery Tour album all the way through. And I go, another album I hadn't. So this morning at the gym, I listened to it all the way through.
Very nice.
And it has more hits on it than the other ones. But, it was just kind of interesting. So that's why, it was on there.
Yeah.
The Sgt. Pepper's one, just because I had an emotional tie to it.
Sure. Well, the final made the cut until it didn't, was 1984's REM Reckoning.
Reckoning, yeah. I was a big REM fan.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw them on the KU campus at Hoke Auditorium.
Nice.
Probably cost me $5 to see.
I bet.
Yeah. A buddy of mine was in line. I happened to be at the Union, and I ran into him. I go, what are you in line for? He goes, oh, REM's coming. I didn't know REM. I'm like, really? Yeah, it's like $5. I'm like, cool. So we just were talking, and I just followed him in line, and I bought a ticket. And I saw REM.
Wow.
Yeah. When they were really just a college band. But Reckoning.
College dropout band.
Yes.
I mean, they were all going to school in Athens and
Yeah.
said, you know what?
Yeah,
They had
I have an idea.
They had their manager drove them around in this van, and they had a $2 per day per diem.
Per diem, is that what it
on
was?
Food
Yeah.
for the.
That sounds like a college kind of thing.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, if that's what you have. But it was a good album. And to this day, and there's a really good tribute band that comes in here called Begin the Begin. And they're an REM
Oh wow.
tribute. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
October 6th, they'll be in here.
Nice.
And they'll be, I think that's the date they're playing with Mystify, which is an NXS tribute band.
Cool. Very nice.
They're really good too. But I got to talking to him about, talk to Steve about the REM one and my connection to it. He kind of had the same kind of thing, and they are very good at emulating, and the voice is there, and it was just it of all of a lot of the tribute bands that come in here are more from the 70s. And they were one of our first 80s kind of tribute band. And so I kind of associate with, and then when the Hip to Be Huey was in here with Jeff Zarcone, Mystify opened for them and the NXS tribute, and they were good. They were really good, but they weren't super. And then the second time they came in, I was sitting in the theater, sitting in here with my buddy Doug, and he came to watch the show, and Mystify started playing, and they're playing, and I'm like, wow, they're just amazing. It's just, man, they really stepped it up. And I was videotaping this, or I was recording this show, in which I do a lot of them, but I didn't have any footage of theirs, and so I'm like, man, he's really set it up. My brother tells me later, and he goes, hey, the lead singer found out that you're doing it. He wanted to see if you could send him a copy because it's the first time they changed lead singers.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
It's like
because the other guys were good,
Well,
but it just stepped it
just
up.
another former drummer for the Beatles.
Yeah. But it was. But REM, and I'll admit, like I was telling Steve, I have no idea what they're saying.
Right.
I'll sing along with whatever I think they're saying. I mean, South Central Rain and, Don't Go Back to Rockville and all those songs that they sing. I'm like, I have no idea.
Right.
It's so hard to understand Michael Stipe.
Yeah.
But I love it. And that to me is kind of odd because I really like the meaning of lyrics and the song
Sure.
and how it progresses and all this. But, it's hooky and it's just.
There's something, the combination of lo-fi and sort of dreariness it has an odd appeal to it,
Yeah, it's true. It was what I would really kind of consider an early version of the grunge, because this was mid '80s,
Right.
That had to have been 84, 85
Yeah.
when
Oh,
I saw
yeah.
them up there.
Nice.
Had a ticket to see them at I think Memorial or Municipal Auditorium or something like that, and I skipped out on it because my niece had been born the night before and I missed it, and I went right. I was going from K-State to visit a friend, and I went right straight up, and I missed the concert. And all my friends that went to the concert said it wasn't that great a concert. And I'm thinking, well, they really weren't big REM fans either. But they said one of the things, my buddy Ken, the one that said something about his girlfriend just liking Amanda, he went to it, and he said what turned him off was Michael Stipe came out and he said, this next song goes out to me. And then he proceeded to sing The One I Love. He's like, ooh, you want to really turn your audience and make you think, I'm thinking, did he do it ironically?
He probably thought it was funny.
Funny, but it did not go over well because everybody was like, what?
Okay, guy.
Yeah. So.
Well, got 5 funny finishers to wrap, and then I got to get home and feed a dog and myself.
Yeah.
So these are just random. If you get a lunch with anyone alive or dead, who are you picking and why?
Anyone alive or dead?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. Who would I? Anyone? I should just go with my first thought of who would want to. Freud. Sigmund Freud.
Fascinating.
Sigmund Freud, because I studied psychology, a psychology degree, but Freud was the man. Twisted and weird, but it just resonated. A lot of things made sense, even though they were off key.
Yeah.
Like he was like, I'm just telling you, it doesn't sound right, but this is, it was, and I still kind of follow in that. I enjoyed but I enjoyed most anything in psychology.
Sure,
but his
a lot
was,
to enjoy.
So it just seems like that would be a crazy interesting conversation, no matter what. So,
complete this for me, please. The world would become an immediately better place in which to live, if only.
If only. More people listen to music.
Oh, nice.
I mean,
nice.
It always seems that like I said, is the thing. It's my go-to for creativity. For if I'm in a bad mood,
Sure.
I can go from just being, and I don't get upset by very many things, but you're just off, and it's like, man, it's just doing that, and the right song will come on, and you're like, yeah, I like that. It just turn you around. Yep. So, and I don't think everybody gets it. No. I don't think everybody gets me, but it's not their thing. I guarantee there's, something about somebody else, but I would think that music seems to, and, I go back to that America Tribute to Heroes.
Yeah.
You talk about something so powerful.
I mean, Willie bringing it all home with America Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And in his own way,
Yep.
Yeah. So.
You wake up tomorrow and you discover that you have inherited $85 million tax-free. What's your first move?
First move. Well, the theater would look a little nicer.
It already looks pretty nice.
Yeah,
though.
but it would definitely rock a little harder, I suspect.
Okay.
There'd be some of these people on this list that might actually show up here.
Nice.
So there would definitely be some wasted money. I'd probably struggle a little bit with who gets the rest because
I'm going to pay this guy to take these seats out, and then I'm going to pay this guy to put them back.
Put them back in. That's right. And then I admire people that with money that are philanthropic.
Yeah, of course.
That in and of itself is just.
Shouts out to Stretch, by the way, for saying that.
Yeah,
about the
it
charity
just.
piece.
I have so much respect for anyone. It was like the first thing out of his mouth. It was like, okay, well, part of this is going to go charity. So here's the deals. Da da da. And I'm like, okay, I need to go back to that. That's incredible.
Shouts out to Dave Matthews too for doing that.
Yeah,
thing
they just do, and there's so many people that do, and it's so inspirational.
Yeah,
and it's just a part of it. And I thought, if I ever had that kind of money, I think the part that would hurt me the most is how I couldn't fix everything.
I know, right?
Right. And I think that's one of the big things. If you look back, people get stupid. They think the money's never ending, and they lose a lot of money. But most people will say the people that after they won the lottery aren't as happy as they were before. I think I like to believe that that's one of the biggest struggles is you have so much money, but you still can't help everybody.
Right.
That'd be the biggest struggle. But
You are gifted with the opportunity to visit yourself at any age in the past of your choosing. So what age are you choosing? Are you saying something to yourself? And if so, what?
I feel like I could visit myself at any time in my 20s and just say, trust your gut.
I like it.
It'll be right.
Cool.
I've been very fortunate. I used to think that I was lucky.
Interesting.
I did. I was extremely lucky. And when I really thought about it, I felt more like I was fortunate. The times that you think, and I had the discussion about how I feel like a lot of times when you feel like people are doing something to you, and you realize they were doing something for you.
Oh, wow.
So I look back and I feel like if I were to say something or change something, I'm not complaining about where I am. I've been very fortunate, but I don't chalk it up to luck.
Right.
I've just, the things that I felt like maybe I did wrong, if I were to go back and say, hey, you need to do this differently, I feel like it might throw off the chain.
The way things were
Yeah.
supposed to happen. Or
Yeah,
unfold.
like maybe it was supposed to be that way.
Right.
My what was it? I said, like the way I met my wife, I met her because I was dating a girl in college that when we broke up, somebody that she knew I met through her. I dated her for a while, and somebody she knew I met through her, and somebody that she met, I met my wife.
There you go.
And somebody said, what would you have done if you wouldn't have met like those first, or that wouldn't have worked out? And I said, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
It worked out the way that it did.
No, but not only that, I would have met my wife no matter what. I really feel that way.
Wow.
It could have changed any of those little pieces. And I would have said, oh, well, what if you didn't meet that person? It wouldn't have mattered. I think I still would have met her. I think I've been very fortunate that way.
Cool.
Everything just sort of lined up.
Nice.
But I think if it was a little different, it would still line up. That's why I go back to just trust your gut.
Right.
Do what you think you need to do. Maybe do a little bit more diligently, but
Sure.
but why? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just everything will be there. You'll be fine.
Well, last but not least, as we sit here from the stage of the Aztec Shawnee Theater with Jeffrey Calkins, true or false? It is okay to wear the T-shirt of the band whose show you're going to the show.
Ooh.
And by the way, this does not
Yeah.
count. You bought it at the merch stand at the show and threw it on in the bathroom.
But if you're going to see the band,
you put it on at the
and
house.
you have the shirt, but you're going to see them, no. No. You don't wear the shirt.
Thank you.
I just don't get it. And I have a good shirt story.
Okay.
A buddy of mine, the one that I cut in line with him to get the REM, and I'm pretty sure it's him, and I may have this story messed up, but he was, he went to a concert one time, and he was a much bigger music fan at the time, bigger concert goer. Like I said, when I said my first real rock concert was Steve Miller, I didn't go to a lot of concerts. I just didn't.
Sure.
REM, Steve Miller, Chuck Mangione. There really weren't a lot of them. I just wasn't a concert goer. I just loved music. He went to a concert one time, and he wore an Aerosmith shirt. He's just wearing his Aerosmith shirt. It wasn't an Aerosmith concert. It was some other concert. but he wore an Aerosmith shirt. When he was walking through there, he was in the walking in or whatever. Some guy came up to him and says, "Man, I like your shirt. I'll trade you shirts." And the guy was wearing some other rock band shirt or something like that. And he said it was kind of cool. And he's like, "Sure." So they switched shirts. He just switched shirts with him. He gives him his Aerosmith shirt. And I remember him wearing his, because he didn't wear it anymore because he'd given it away to this guy. But he had this cool story about it because he said he was there with a group and the whatever band, I don't even remember what the band was playing, but obviously it wasn't Aerosmith.
Right.
But whatever the band was. And don't even remember what the shirt was he gave him. But gives him a shirt. And they're sitting there and they're at the concert, the headliner's there and they're playing. And one of Brian's buddies taps him and goes, "Did you wear your Aerosmith shirt here today?" And he goes, "Yeah, I traded a guy for it." He goes, "Is it the drummer?" It was the drummer.
No
from
way.
Whoever the band was wearing his and Brian's like, "That's my shirt."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Had
awesome.
no idea who he was. But the guy up there on there was wearing his Aerosmith shirt.
That's
Well,
hilarious.
that's why he wanted it. So, yeah.
Nice.
No, you don't wear it.
Thank
But I
you.
will say, I do still have my Abracadabra Steve Miller
Hey.
shirt.
Absolutely.
I am going to. So we've got a band coming in here. It's a Steve Miller tribute.
I saw it's advertised for September,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, coming up. Yeah, one of Scott Allowell's bands. That's a Steve Miller tribute. They do a really
Wait,
good one.
as in Hotter Than Hell?
Yeah,
Scott?
That's him. Yeah, that's him.
Wow. He's in how many cover bands?
I don't know.
3 or 4?
Almost Kiss.
Yep.
He's got a Styx one now.
Okay.
Which I'm looking forward to. I haven't heard that one yet.
That's awesome.
He's got the Steve Miller, John Cougar, Doobie Brothers. Yeah. The Kiss one was my first one. I've got a great picture of all of them up in the green room with all in full makeup.
Nice.
And standing in front of him, we're all wearing.
I think I knew
Almost
him
Kiss shirts.
knew him for 2 or 3 years and heard of him for 6 before I found out what his name was.
Really?
Or
Yeah,
his
because
real
he was always
name.
because he's always almost Gene
Yeah.
or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
So-
he's
Aztec Theater. I'm assuming we should give shouts out to the team that is in place making things happen. Your staff, your partners.
Yeah.
You've got a pretty healthy calendar, from my perspective, to sort of close out the year.
Yep.
With maybe just 1 or 2 January spots that appear on the website. Business as usual for 2024. Is there? I mean, I know you mentioned you're conjuring some energy to do something different seating wise, but
still doing a lot of the same things. Trying to get some new bands in here, getting a little bit more out of our normal realm every once in a while. We've got a bluegrass band coming in from Colorado that's. We'll be here into September. Earl Nelson and the company.
Okay.
They had some ties here to Shawnee, but they play out of Colorado. Contacted me and said, "Hey, we'd like to play." Set up a deal. They knew some guys from Transport Brewery, the brewery next door.
Cool.
We've got an after party going on for that. They've got a special beer labeled for them.
Nice.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I just talked to the guy from the True Tones. Hopefully that's probably going to be in 2024 just because I don't have much room for him. I've got a small group that has been wanting to perform in here, I guess, and it's performed for years. It's a doctor and an attorney, and then they just brought in somebody else. It's called Columbia Blue. They're kind of a James Taylor kind of a
Interesting.
vibe.
Okay.
And I've heard some of their stuff. They're here the night before Earl Nelson. Trying to think, and of course we show movies and stuff too.
Yeah.
We just showed Captain Blood last week.
Nice.
The old Errol Flynn one. Actually, pretty good flick. Some of those old ones are kind of quirky and fun just because they're old.
Yeah.
Actually, pretty good movie.
Nice.
I didn't get to see the whole thing, but what I saw, I'm like, wow, this is actually somewhat intriguing for a
Good.
1934, 35 movie. It's pretty good. Some more movies. I'm working with a guy from Germany that does these.
West Germany.
Yeah, I don't know if he's West or East. He was on Gorbachev's side. I don't know,
right.
But they he does like film festival type things. Trying to figure out if we want to fill some dates in October just to have some fun horror movie things. So trying to work with him. Just trying to expand out, do a little bit differently, but yeah, definitely keep our core
Cool.
fundamental kind of fun groups. And
I mentioned the Twitter account. I'm pretty sure I saw a link to a Facebook page on your website, which again is Aztec Shawnee Theater.com.
Yep. Yeah, AztecShawnee.com and AztecShawneeTheater.com. And then the Facebook is Aztec Shawnee Theater.
So
same with Instagram as well.
Best way to keep... Oh, you have an Instagram as well. Okay,
Instagram
so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Yep.
Is one of those platforms the best way to keep finger on the pulse, or is there a newsletter?
Facebook and Instagram are.
Okay.
We send out an email blast. Currently, we're using Eventbrite for our ticketing platform.
Okay.
So I can shoot through there. So if they want to add their email to that, they can just send it to me. It's Jeff C.
But if you go to the web page, there is a spot to sign up to be on that email blast.
I believe so. Yes.
Which would keep you in the loop of what's happening, movie and concert-wise.
And the website has all of the concerts that are coming up too. Click on them, goes right to the ticketing agent. I'm looking at some different ticketing options.
Okay.
We currently pass along the fees, which Eventbrite is really pretty cheap, but I think there's some other ones out there. I really want our patrons, the people that are buying the tickets, not to have to absorb so much fees. And I'm looking at one in particular right now that I think is a pretty good fit, where it's cheap, where we can say, here's how much the ticket is. We'll take care of all the fees. Because it's just kind of nice that way. But yeah, you can go to the website. You can find all of our concerts, all of it's going on, and we do private events in here. We had, 2 private events. We had I told you we had a podcast. The Ghost Runners guys were in here and actually filmed a live, full production podcast in here. Cool, which was kind of cool, and maybe you know what? If you have enough followers, it's it was kind of interesting how they kind of interact with the audience, but they talked amongst themselves and they and all that. So yeah, a little bit different format. I don't know how well it would work.
I want to check them out and see what they're all about.
Yeah, they're good. A couple of Shawnee guys, so I always love that. So so we're all big about community, and we try to have concerts every Friday and Saturday. Doesn't always work out, but if we do that, like I said, when we first got the theater, we knew there were a couple people waiting to see if we got it, and if they did, then we'd start building here. So, Transport Brewery was one of the first ones. They actually opened before we did. But there was a lot of fun businesses that were down here before, but since we opened, the Transport Brewery is now down here. Service Brewery down the street. One of the other ones, Friction Beer, just opened a couple of months ago.
Okay,
another brewery. Drastic Measures, which is a kind of a speakeasy. Jay and those guys in the Shackfords, they do really good. Wild Child, which is a kind of a wine bar. It's got some low ABV and things. There's down here McLean's Bakery and deli down there. District Poorhouse moved in. Mother Clucker's down the street, which is like a Nashville chicken place. It's fantastic. I love that place. The couple of other restaurants, and there's still more on the way. There's a new French restaurant supposedly going in.
Wow. Go Shawnee.
And Anadore's Chocolates, the gelato shop over here.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of things going on. So Fridays and Saturdays, a lot of movement, a lot of pedestrian traffic, and we love having a draw down here that people can come down and see a movie or catch a concert and do it. Yeah, we've got some big things coming up.
Love it.
Yeah.
Listen, I really appreciate all of our correspondence, our phone call, our email message exchanges, obviously this. It's just really been nice to get to know you and chat with you.
You too.
I appreciate you taking the time to sit with me and do this, and thank you for inviting me here to
well,
do it.
and I appreciate you coming down too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a bit of a task to go remote and do it that way. I know you said you kind of, but you can see from the equipment and all the setup time, it's a little bit of a hassle. So I really do appreciate it
all
coming in
good.
here. I love people being in my space.
Yeah.
It's just
I'm
one
glad-
of those things,
I'm
and
glad we
I
did it
love the
this way.
podcast. It's just, and I usually tell people when, especially when we were talking about the theater and talk about these kind of things in general, I usually tell them, you are the one that need to tell me to stop talking, because I'll keep going. And it's just an odd thing. It's just, I'm just passionate about it. So,
Well, it's
and when it
good to
comes to
hear.
music, when you said something about that, I thought, oh man, I'm all in on this.
Right.
This is just going to be fun. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thank
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.